Chapter 538. The opening ceremony officially began. First, the director and executive producer went on stage to speak to the media. Following that, the representatives from the various departments of the production team went on stage to offer incense. Finally, as one of the two main leads, Yoon Shirshir, who was Gu Xingze, naturally had to go on stage to offer incense. Yoon Shirshir and Gu Xingze went on stage face to face and the media erupted in cheers. The appearance of the two main leads was undoubtedly the climax of the opening ceremony. Youth movies were very strict about the looks of the main leads. Yoon Shirshir and Gu Xingze were the epitome of reverse aging. One was 24 years old and the other was 28 years old. When they stood together, they were the perfect match for the male and female leads in the original novel. Yoon Shirshir had specially chosen a snow-white dress today, which accentuated her well-proportioned figure. Her luscious black hair cascaded down her shoulders like satin, and her porcelain-like face was pure and elegant. Gu Xingze wore a snow-white shirt and black slim pants. His simple outfit exuded a youthful aura. His delicate facial features were youthful and handsome. His skin was fair and clear, and his eyes were clear. Therefore, even though he was 28 years old, he did not feel out of place when he played Yin Dongyu from high school to university. When the two of them stood together, there was no need for post-production editing. Their good looks seemed to have established the foundation of the movie's box office. The media reporters standing below the stage were all amazed. Rumor had it that Lin Fengtian had a strict eye for talent. He was very precise about the positioning of actors and had a unique eye for choosing actors. At first, they were more or less doubtful about why Yoon Shirshir was chosen as the female lead. However, looking at the two of them on stage, they could only feel the beauty of youth and the kindness that time had shown them. It made them jealous. Lin Fengtian had chosen her for a reason. Whether it was in terms of looks or temperament, Yoon Shirshir was qualified for this role. Compared to the previous female lead candidates, Yen Bingqing, Yang Mi, and Yoon Shirshir, although they were about the same age, their looks were obvious. Yoon Shirshir and Gu Xingze looked at each other, then walked to the tribute table and lit up an incense stick. Gu Xingze lowered his head and lit the incense. The two of them bowed together. After offering incense, it was time for the two main actors to interview each other. Hello, Yoon Shirshir. I'm a reporter from Phoenix Media. Please talk about how you feel about playing the role of Yin Shachuan. Yoon Shirshir, who had received on-the-spot training, only needed a few seconds to come up with a draft. She smiled and said, "Thank you for your question. First of all, I am very happy to be able to work with such an excellent team." Director Lin Fengtian was a very responsible and dedicated director who pursued perfection in his film career. The atmosphere on the set of The Green Apple was very good. He felt very honored to be able to work with so many outstanding friends. I like the script of The Green Apple very much. I've read the original novel before. The character of Yin Shachuan is brimming with youthfulness and dares to love and hate. I will try my best to do my best. Finally, please advise me. As soon as he finished speaking, there was a round of applause. Hello, Gu Xingze. Can you also talk about how you feel about acting in this movie? Chapter 539. After a pause, he turned to look at Yoon Shirshir and slowly said, I'm also very happy to be able to work with Shirshir. Shirshir is the Yin Shachuan in my heart. She's a very talented newcomer and is full of spirit. I'm very happy to work with her, and I hope that the upcoming filming will go smoothly. Everyone, please look forward to The Green Apple. Thank you. A reporter immediately raised his hand and asked, Xingze, there are rumors that you were the one who recommended Yoon Shirshir to Director Lin. Can you verify if this rumor is true? There was a moment of silence. Everyone looked at each other. Yoon Shirshir was recommended to Lin Fengtian by Gu Xingze. Gu Xingze was silent for a while, then slowly nodded and said, Yes. The media reporters below the stage immediately exploded. The situation was a little out of control. Originally, the reporters who were invited for an interview had already been arranged by the production team. Now that Gu Xingze's speech had caused the reporters to become restless, the questions they asked were getting more and more deviated from the main topic of the interview. Xingze, what's your relationship with Yoon Shirshir? Gu Xingze calmly replied, "We're friends. Just ordinary friends? There are rumors that Yun Shirshir is your first girlfriend. Is this true?" "Nonsense. Gu Xingze. What do you think of Yun Shirshir, this newcomer actress? Although she's a newcomer, she's full of spirit and very talented. She'll be an excellent actress." Gu Xingze, at Huanyu's annual cocktail party, Yun Shirshir was your female companion. May I ask if you invited her? I invited her to be my female companion. May I ask if she and you? Seeing that the situation was getting out of control, Qin Zhou immediately sent people to escort Yun Shirshir and Gu Xingze off the stage. The MC went on stage to make a closing speech, and the opening ceremony ended in a hurry. After getting off the stage, Yun Shirshir looked a little upset. She was caught off guard by the media's fierce questions and didn't know how to respond several times. If it wasn't for Gu Xingze's strong ability to react on the spot, she might have said something wrong. Gu Xingze had been in the entertainment industry for 10 years, so he was experienced in reacting on the spot. He had long been used to such situations, so he was able to react fluently. But to her, it was inevitable that she was not used to it. Gu Xingze looked down at her flustered expression and asked softly, "Are you scared?" "A little." Yun Shirshir was still in a state of shock. These media reporters should have interview scripts. How did the situation get completely out of control in the end? Gu Xingze patted her on the shoulder and comforted her. "The media is like this. They are all-pervasive and take advantage of every opportunity. Even if they have interview scripts, they won't follow the routine. Yes, thank you for just now. If it wasn't for you, I wouldn't know what to do." Yun Shirshir thanked him sincerely. Gu Xingze only smiled. Qin Zhou rushed over. When he saw Yun Shirshir, he scolded her. "Why is your ability to react on the spot so bad? What happened to the skills you learned?" Yun Shirshir looked aggrieved. "Chairman Qin, it's my first time." Qin Zhou was angry and ignored her explanation. "You almost said something wrong a few times just now. You really scared me to death. If it wasn't for Xingze, you would definitely have been led into the gutter by those sly media reporters." Yun Shirshir was scolded until she felt hopeless. Chapter 540. Even if you don't know how to respond, you have to smile. Okay? You have to maintain the demeanor of a goddess at all times. What's with that confused face just now? Reporters always choose to publish articles with gimmicks when they take photos. You were so stunning at the cocktail party before, and now your ugly photos are taken by the reporters. Do you still want your goddess-like demeanor? Yun Shirshir felt as if her soul was about to leave her body after listening to her vicious scolding. Gu Xingze frowned and said, "Qin Zhou, be gentler. Okay, pack up. There's a photo with the main creator later. Remember, if someone wants to take your spot, don't give way. Okay? You're the female lead, so you can just stand next to Xingze." Qin Zhou was a little worried that Yan Bingqing would take his spot. Yun Shirshir nodded. After taking the photo with the main creators, the opening ceremony officially ended. In the blink of an eye, it was already evening. "Let's have dinner together?" Gu Xingze walked to Yun Shirshir and asked. Yun Shirshir licked her lips. She was a little hungry, so she nodded slightly. He asked again, "What do you want to eat?" What's good around here?" Gu Xingze said, "We'll go eat whatever you want to eat." Yun Shirshir smiled playfully and said, "Let's go eat Western food then." Gu Xingze broke into a smile and readily agreed. Secret Love Western Restaurant was located in the busiest area of Huaihai Road. The decorations were elegant, and the Western food was exquisite, so it was very popular. If one didn't make a reservation, it would be difficult to get a seat. Moreover, it was mealtime now. Knowing that Yun Shirshir wanted to eat Secret Love Western food, Gu Xingze sent someone to call and make a reservation in advance. Naturally, it was a matter of course. The restaurant manager even specially arranged an elegant booth for them. It had elegant lighting, glass windows, and beaded curtains. It was uniquely romantic. Therefore, when the waiter led them to the booth, Yun Shirshir felt a little happy and excited. She sat on the seat contentedly, her little head turning around curiously, looking at the decorations of the booth. Gu Xingze sat down gracefully. As soon as he sat down, Yun Shirshir looked up and flashed him a brilliant smile. She said happily, "The atmosphere here is so romantic. It's a good place. Thank you, Xingzi." Gu Xingzi was slightly stunned. He suddenly realized that she was thanking him for bringing her to eat Western food. He could not help but frown. He had been sick of Western food since he was a child. To be honest, Western food made with love was delicious, but for his picky taste, it was still average. Originally, he had planned to take her to the French restaurant if she liked Western food. However, seeing how much she longed for this place, he gave up on the idea. Yun Shirshir saw him frown and mistakenly thought that she had made him angry. When she thought of how she had called his name so directly, her cheeks turned red. She said softly, "Senior Gu." Gu Xingzi raised his eyebrows. Yun Shirshir continued to explain, "I don't think I should have called your name directly." "Yes." What? Gu Xingzi calmly picked up the menu on the side and handed it to her. He looked at her deeply and said lightly, "You can call my name." His eyes were gentle for a moment, then returned to their usual calmness. He lowered his head and looked at the menu. Chapter 541. Xingzi. Xingzi. What a nice name. She recalled what Qin Zhou had said before. It seemed that very few people were qualified enough to call him by his name, but he allowed her to call him that. Did this mean that he treated her as a friend? Yun Shirshir pursed her lips and smiled at the thought of this. Western dishes were all the same, but AI Western restaurant's most popular signature dish was the steak. The steak here was quite delicious and had a unique flavor. Gu Xingzi ordered some dishes of his own, some snacks, and a medium-rare filet mignon with black pepper. Yun Shirshir, on the other hand, was at a loss. Looking at the dazzling array of menu, the mouth-watering steak, spaghetti, delicious snacks, exquisite desserts, and ice cream, she was really a little dazzled. She had never ordered Western food by herself and didn't have her own ideas. She really didn't know what to order. Looking at this and that, which were quite delicious, she was a little hesitant for a moment. Now that her stomach was big, she wanted to greedily order a portion of every dish, but she was afraid that she wouldn't be able to finish it and it would be too wasteful. Thus, she looked at Gu Xingzi for help. Gu Xingzi took a soft towel and was carefully wiping the cutlery, not noticing her gaze at all. Yun Shirshir lowered her head a little dispiritedly and pouted in annoyance. She glanced at the menu carelessly, then looked up and said with a smile, "I'll just order the same as him." Although she didn't know what exactly he ordered, with his taste, the dishes he ordered should be delicious. She still trusted his foresight. The waiter nodded and asked respectfully, "Excuse me, is your filet mignon also medium rare with black pepper sauce?" Yun Shirshir nodded. The waiter put away the menu and smiled as he left. Yun Shirshir curled her lips in satisfaction and turned around to see Gu Xingzi wiping the cutlery for the second time. She didn't know why, but her eyes were deeply attracted to his fair and slender fingers. What a beautiful hand. It was even more beautiful than a woman's hand. His joints were distinct, his fingers were long, and he wore a beautiful pinky ring on his little finger. With such hands, even if they were holding a knife and fork, the image was so beautiful. She suddenly remembered that Qin Zhou had mentioned that he was a serious clean freak. She pursed her lips and imitated him. Taking a napkin from him, she started wiping the cutlery in a serious manner. "Hey, it's Xingzi." A sweet voice suddenly broke the silence. Yun Shirshir looked up in confusion and saw a gorgeously dressed woman standing by the booth. She was in a long black dress and had exquisite makeup. Beside him was a woman who was also dressed up beautifully. She also looked very noble. The two of them had come to eat together, but they happened to pass by the booth. They didn't expect to meet Gu Xingzi here. After all, Gu Xingzi rarely dined at such a Western restaurant. Still, amidst her pleasant surprise, the woman shifted her gaze to Yun Shirshir. She was secretly puzzled. Who was this lass sitting opposite him? She was dressed like a student and looked obedient. She didn't look like a lady from any family. She seemed to be a commoner. Was she a new actress? Chapter 542. However, even if she was very picky, she still felt that the girl in front of her was unbelievably beautiful. Her skin was fair, Her eyes were bright, her lips were red, and her teeth were white. Even without makeup, she was mesmerizing. If such a lovely girl were to be thrown into her circle, many men would fight for her. Gu Xingze nodded at her. Yun Shishir recognized one of the women at a glance. Although she didn't know her name, the last time she was dining with Wuxia, she had barged into the private room with a man. This woman was Yi Minglan. The female companion beside her was also the daughter of a wealthy family in the capital, Huangna. Both of them were born with a silver spoon in their mouths. They frequented the upper class and were also socialites. Yi Minglan and Gu Xingze weren't close, but they had met before. Their relationship was considered friendly, so she naturally sat beside Gu Xingze. She called for the waiter and ordered some dishes. Yun Shishir felt a little awkward. Yi Minglan was very friendly, as if she didn't recognize her. She only felt that she looked very familiar. Although she didn't have a good impression of the girl beside Gu Xingze, she still smiled at her. She turned to Gu Xingze and asked, "Xingze, who is this? Why don't you introduce her to us?" "A friend of mine." Gu Xingze spoke calmly but didn't introduce her. On the surface, his attitude was as if she was just an insignificant person. In reality, it was to protect her. Yi Minglan smiled slightly. Although she couldn't figure out her identity, judging by Gu Xingze's attitude, she was probably just an ordinary friend. Although she didn't like her, she still stretched out her hand in a friendly manner and said, "Hello, I'm Yi Minglan. I'm also Xingze's friend. This is my good friend, Huang Na." Yun Shishir's lips curled into a stiff smile as she shook hands with her friend, feeling very uncomfortable inside. She had been a little shy since she was young, so she was a little afraid of strangers. Now that there were two strangers sitting in her seat, she naturally became a little reserved. Huang Na was a fan of Gu Xingze's, but she did not have much interaction with him. She would occasionally see him from afar at some business cocktail parties. Now that she was in close contact with him, she could tell that he was as handsome and elegant as the rumors made him out to be. At once, she had a 200% favorable impression of him and was very tempted. However, she was aware of her own limitations. A man like him could at most be seen from afar. If one really wanted to get close to him, it would be harder than ascending to the heavens. If it wasn't for Yi Minglan, she probably wouldn't have been able to sit in this position. The dishes were served very quickly, and the waiter's attitude was also very respectful. The manager had specifically told him that the guests at this table must be treated with utmost care, and their orders must be prioritized. Yun Shishir was already very hungry, but when she saw the dishes on the table, she instantly lost her appetite. She faintly had some doubts about Gu Xingze's taste. Before this, she didn't know the meaning of how well done a steak was. She also didn't know what it meant. Before this, she also didn't know that creatures like snails could be used as delicacies. Chapter 543. How was she supposed to eat it? But the food had already been served. She couldn't possibly return it, right? That would make her a laughingstock. Thus, she gritted her teeth and looked like she was facing death calmly. She picked up her knife and fork and started cutting the steak. After all, it was still half raw. The cutlery used in Honey Love Western food was made of stainless steel, so it was a little heavy. In addition, she wasn't very good at using a knife and fork, so she couldn't cut it no matter how hard she tried. Yun Shishir frowned in annoyance and suddenly felt a little embarrassed. She raised her head to look at Gu Xingze again and saw him elegantly cutting the steak. Sensing her pleading gaze, he raised his head and saw her pursing her lips and staring at him as if she was silently hinting at something. Gu Xingze secretly laughed. This little fool just had to order the same meal as him. His taste had always been more unique, so how could she possibly get used to it? He quietly swapped his plate with hers. Yun Shishir was stunned. Looking at the steak in her hand that he had already cut, she picked up a piece with her fork and swallowed it with difficulty. She closed her eyes tightly and bit down. It was half raw and she couldn't bite through it. Yun Shishir's mouth pouted. She couldn't spit it out or swallow it. Her expression was really sullen. She was a little regretful. If she had known earlier, she would have ordered it herself. Yi Minglan's food was quickly served. They were all exquisite snacks that made Yun Shirshi's heart skip a beat. Yi Minglan smiled and chatted with Gu Xingze as she ate. Yun Shirshir really wanted to order something else, but she was too embarrassed to interrupt. Thus, she lowered her head and silently swallowed. She really swallowed without chewing. Gu Xingze wasn't very interested to begin with. When he turned his head and saw Yun Shirshir's pained expression, he couldn't help but laugh. Thus, he slowly put down his knife and fork and asked, "Would you like to order something else?" Yun Shirshir's eyes lit up and she nodded as if she had been granted amnesty. She couldn't stand such food anymore. After that, Gu Xingze ordered a bowl of spaghetti and some desserts for her. Yun Shirshir did not have a big appetite. After eating so much food, her stomach was already bulging. Halfway through the meal, Yi Minglan suddenly thought of something. She turned around and asked, "Xingze, today is my birthday. I wonder if you could give me some face and celebrate my birthday with me?" Before Gu Xingze could answer, Yi Minglan quickly added, as if she was afraid that he would reject her, "I'm planning to celebrate my birthday at a bar. Many of my friends will be there. Xingze, you won't refuse to give me face, right?" She was indeed a socialite who frequented social cocktail parties. Naturally, she had some skills with her words. With such an appropriate excuse, even if Gu Xingze wanted to refuse, he had no reason to do so. He pondered for a moment and then nodded. When Yi Minglan saw that he had nodded, she was naturally elated. Gu Xingze looked at Yun Shirshir and said, "Let's go." "Okay." He stood up elegantly and led Yun Shirshir away. Yi Minglan and Huang Na also planned to leave. They called the waiter to settle the bill, but they found out that the bill for this table had already been charged to Gu Xingze's credit card. Chapter 544. Huang Na was surprised. "Oh my God, but I think she has a pure temperament. She seems to be Xingze's type." There was an interview with Gu Xingze in the past. The report said that he liked pure girls with waist-length hair and bright eyes. This woman just so happened to fit his ideal type perfectly. "Why do you care who she is? Why do you think I asked Gu Xingze out tonight? It's to create an opportunity for you. Nana, don't let me down." Huang Na teased. "Don't you like Gu Xingze too?" Yi Minglan smiled. "Gu Xingze is a dragon among men, but I only admire him. I have someone in my heart." "Who is it?" Huang Na asked curiously. "Mu Yaja." Yi Minglan snorted. "Young Master Mu. But wasn't he already engaged?" Huang Na was shocked. She suddenly remembered the rumors from before. So what if he's engaged? Mu Wanru can't even give birth to a child. I don't see young Master Mu bringing her around all the time. It's just a marriage arranged by the family. Moreover, so what if he's married? Look at the heads of the Mu family. Which one of them didn't have a harem and a bunch of mistresses? Which lady in the capital doesn't admire him and want to climb up the social ladder wholeheartedly? Huang Na was surprised. "Don't tell me you want to be his mistress?" Yi Minglan smiled arrogantly, and her lips curled into a disdainful smile. "Mistress? Bah! If I want to be, I'll be the young mistress of the Mu family." Palace Bar was the most expensive bar in the capital. It was also the most high-end bar. It was the golden hour. The metal music was booming and the stage lights were crisscrossing. The atmosphere had reached its climax. This was the bar opened by the crown prince of the Ochen group in the capital. The people who came in and out of this bar were the rich and famous in the capital, or the popular celebrities. Of course, there were also famous directors and directors. Of course, Gu Xingze often came to this bar. He had a good relationship with some of the musicians here, so he often came to support them. However, he was not like the other young masters who liked to be lively. When he came here, he would often occupy a secluded booth, order a bottle of Hennessy, and enjoy the peace and quiet alone. There were plenty of second-generation rich and second-generation officials coming and going in and out of the imperial palace. Once night fell, the young masters and young ladies of the financial groups would gather here to pass the time. Instead of calling it a bar, it would be more appropriate to call it a bar hall of fame. At this moment, a popular rock singer was standing on the stage. His wild singing resounded as much as he wanted, and the strong rhythm of the music was carefree. In the VIP booth, a ding sound was heard as more than a dozen beer glasses collided with each other. Yeah. Cheers! A handsome man excitedly gulped down his drink. He had obviously drunk too much as his cheeks were flushed. A brown-haired beauty sitting next to him just took a sip and leaned on his shoulder. She waved her hands and said incoherently, "I can't take it anymore. Hee." The crowd made a tacit hiss. It seemed to be a bit disappointing, but it seemed that they didn't intend to let her go. They still pulled her to drink. Chapter 545. The slightly drunk brown-haired beauty was the daughter of the Ye Yuan group, and the handsome man beside her was the big boss of this bar and the young master of the Ochin group, Su Liang. When Yun Shirshir followed Gu Xingze into the bar, she was shocked by the deafening music and covered her ears. At this moment, the atmosphere was at its climax. She stared blankly at the people dancing to the music on the dance floor. Looking at their unrestrained appearance, she couldn't help but feel a little stunned. She rarely came to this kind of place. Although it wasn't as chaotic as she had imagined, she still couldn't get used to it. The crowd was crowded, the music was loud, and the voices were loud. Yun Shirshir couldn't help but hold Gu Xingze's hand tightly in the crowded crowd. His hand was a little cold, but it gave her a great sense of security. Feeling her little hand, Gu Xingze lowered his head to look at the helpless person beside him. He got a message from her disgusted eyes. She couldn't get used to it. She didn't even like to come to bars. That's right, she looked like a quiet woman. She probably couldn't get used to this kind of place. Gu Xingze held her hand and raised his eyebrows. "You don't like this place?" "Ah, what did you say?" The bar was too noisy, so Yun Shirshir couldn't hear clearly. She couldn't help but tiptoe to listen. Gu Xingze was tall and slender. Even when she stood on her tiptoes, she could only reach his shoulders. Yun Shirshir was a little annoyed as she clung to his shoulders. Gu Xingze couldn't help but smile. He leaned over to her ear and said word by word, "You don't like it here?" His deep and magnetic voice was accompanied by his breath. Yun Shirshir only felt that her neck was boiling hot, as if it was dyed with a ball of fire. It burned her cheeks and made them strangely red. She nodded unnaturally and said loudly, "I don't like it here." As she spoke, she opened her mouth wide, as if she was afraid that he couldn't hear her clearly. "If you don't like it, then leave." Gu Xingze grabbed her arm and turned to leave. Yun Shirshir was stunned. She quickly tugged at his sleeve and smiled at her. "Don't you have an appointment with a friend? Don't worry about it. Just do what you need to do. I'll accompany you. Stay with him." Gu Xingze raised his eyebrows. He was stunned for a moment, and the corners of his mouth curled up involuntarily. Out of the corner of his eye, he suddenly caught a glimpse of a graceful figure walking through the crowd towards him. Yi Minglan had changed into a sexy black dress. Her wavy hair hung down in front of her chest. She seemed to have touched up her makeup, making her look even more exquisite and charming. She had a wild charm to her. "Master Mu, you're here. I've been waiting for you for a long time." Gu Xingze curled his lips slightly. Yi Minglan's gaze wandered and she glanced at Yun Shirshir, who was beside him. She was wearing a pure white dress, revealing her slender and fair legs. She was dressed in the standard student attire, and her entire body was filled with a taboo beauty. In this day and age, many men liked such a style. Uniforms were seductive and pure. Yun Shirshir had dressed up for the opening ceremony, so she looked youthful. Now, she was somewhat out of place in such an occasion. Yi Minglan suddenly felt that she looked familiar. She seemed to have seen her somewhere before, but she couldn't recall where. Chapter 546. Realizing that she was looking at her, Yun Shirshir hid behind Gu Xingze uneasily. She scanned her surroundings timidly, her little hands clutching his sleeves tightly and her lips curled into an unnatural arc. Yi Minglan smiled at her and greeted her with a friendly smile. "Hello, do you still remember me? We met at the Western restaurant just now." Even though she didn't really like this girl, she was Gu Xingze's female companion after all. Naturally, she didn't dare to show her any attitude. Yun Shirshir shook her head blankly. Yi Minglan was a little embarrassed, but then she smiled naturally. "It's okay. We'll be done soon. Come, Xingze, come with me. Everyone's here and we're just waiting for you. Gu Xingze nodded, lowered his head, and held Yun Shishir's hand. They followed the woman to the booth. Yi Minglan ran into the booth first and said excitedly, "Hee, I've invited a VIP today. Hurry up and give up your seat. Li Chengze, sit over there. Give up your seat." Li Chengze was a little unhappy. The seating arrangement was particular. It was Yi Minglan's birthday today, so naturally, she would be the one sitting first. However, the other seats were arranged according to the person's status. The seat he was sitting in was naturally a good one. However, Yi Minglan actually wanted him to give up his seat, so he couldn't help but be a little surprised. In the capital, he was considered a big shot. Yet, she wanted him to give up his seat for someone else? Li Chengze was a little unhappy. Oh, who's the big shot that's coming? Who made great beauty Yi so excited that she's starting to chase people away? Yi Minglan smiled sweetly. You'll know when he's here. As soon as she finished speaking, Gu Xingze held Yun Shishir's hand and walked slowly into the booth. When his face was revealed under the dim light, everyone present could not help but suck in a breath of cold air. Li Chengze choked on a mouthful of smoke and coughed repeatedly. In front of her, the handsome man was wearing a dark red shirt. His every movement was gentlemanly, and his bearing was extraordinary. His facial features were as exquisite as the work of the gods. He had sharp eyebrows and a pair of enchanting phoenix eyes. His eyelashes were long and thick, concealing the charming light in his eyes. If Gu Xingze was said to be an elegant gentleman in front of the camera, then he was unruly, calm, introverted, and cold and arrogant in front of the camera. When their gazes landed on the timid girl beside him, all the men present couldn't sit still any longer. Just how beautiful was this girl? They could not express it in words. Her hair was like refined clouds, her eyebrows were like willows, and she had a fair and clear oval-shaped face. Her willowy eyebrows were slightly furrowed, and her pair of almond-shaped eyes were bright and charming. She looked like a fairy from ancient times. However, at this moment, her dark red lips were tightly pursed, as if she was somewhat reserved. She was different from the other women who frequented the bars and wore sexy clothes. This young girl was wearing a student outfit that did not fit in with the atmosphere. She was so pure that it was as if water could be squeezed out of her. Even a bite would be sour. However, no man would be able to resist such a fatal temptation. Li Chengze, however, was stunned. For a moment, he was also a little surprised. Chapter 547. It was such a pity when he thought about how this pure and innocent woman was already taken. How great would it be if he had met her? But why was this woman with Gu Xingze now? Young Master Gu. This time, without Yi Minglan's urging, Li Chengze consciously gave up his seat. As a person who frequented high society and was a true aristocrat in the capital, he could naturally recognize Gu Xingze. It was because of his brother, Gu Jinglian. In the capital, even if they did not know the mayor, Gu Jinglian was a prominent figure and everyone knew who he was. There was no one in the Gu family in the capital who did not know Gu Jinglian. Li Chengze had interacted with Gu Jinglian before. Therefore, even if it was for Gu Jinglian's sake, he still had to give him some face. Therefore, he enthusiastically extended his hand. Gu Xingze expressionlessly glanced at him from the corner of his eye and also extended his hand. However, he only shook it briefly before retracting his hand. His cold attitude made Li Chengze feel a little awkward. He coldly reprimanded him in his heart, but his face still showed an extremely flattering smile. Gu Xingze held Yun Shishir's hand and sat down. Li Chengze selfishly sat next to Yun Shishir. He looked at such a delicate person sitting next to him. Her exposed snow-white arm unintentionally brushed past his elbow. Just this alone was enough to make him feel a little uneasy. She was such a beautiful woman, and a small unintentional action from her was enough to stir his heart to the point that he couldn't sit still. The woman sitting next to Li Chengze saw Gu Xingze and couldn't help but feel a little moved. She was not a socialite in this circle. She was just a young model who had made a name for herself in the entertainment industry. She had never attended any high society events. With her status, naturally, She had never had the chance to meet Gu Xingze in person. She only knew that Gu Xingze had debuted for 10 years, and no one could shake his heavenly king status. But for a celebrity to be able to make Li Chengze give up his seat, she must have some background. Therefore, she quietly nudged Li Chengze's elbow and whispered, "Young Master Li, this Gu Xingze's background isn't simple." Yes. His brother is young Master Gu, a powerful figure. Master Gu? Which Master Gu? Li Chengze was fully focused on Yun Shishir and had no time to pay attention to her. He only glanced at her impatiently. How many young Master Gu are there in the capital? He's the young Master Gu I mentioned to you before, one of the 4 young masters of Beijing. I've only heard of the Gu family in Beijing. They have an incredible background. That's right. Who else in the capital could make Yi Minglan respectfully address him as young Master Gu? Of course it's Gu Jinglian from the Gu family. The other man beside Li Chengze turned pale with fright. Ah? He's Master Gu's younger brother. As she spoke, she lowered her voice again. I thought he was just a celebrity. Looks like he's really young. Is he in his early 20s? Yi Minglan was seated next to them and naturally overheard their soft conversation. She snorted arrogantly and said, "If it wasn't for my sake today, I reckon that you wouldn't even have the right to sit and drink with him." Li Chengze sighed but didn't refute her. In his heart, he acknowledged that Gu Jinglian was a powerful figure. Chapter 548. Li Chengze suddenly looked at Yun Shishir with interest. His eyes lit up as he muttered, "Minglan, what's the name of the girl sitting beside him? If you can get her for me." Yi Minglan rolled her eyes at him and snorted disdainfully. "Look at you. Why? Are you interested in her? Don't think of being an old cow who chases young grass. Can you help me think of a way to get this woman? When the time comes, I'll give you the limited edition Hermes bag that you've taken a fancy to. Who cares?" Yi Minglan pushed him angrily. Her lips curled into a mocking smile. "Enough. Keep on dreaming. How dare you have designs on Xingze's partner? Are you tired of living?" Li Chengze's eyes were filled with excitement. He said softly, "Isn't it just a woman? Is there a woman in the capital that I, Li Chengze, can't handle? Hehe. It seems like this girl is really sweet. Wasn't she with young Master Mu the last time? Most likely, young Master Mu played with her on a whim." Yi Minglan took a few more glances at Yun Shishir when Li Chengze mentioned her. She immediately recognized that this girl was the one who had dined with young Master Mu the last time. No wonder she found her familiar. She was upset when she thought of how she had chased them out the last time. However, on second thought, this woman was with Gu Xingze now. Perhaps young Master Mu was tired of her and wanted to use Gu Xingze to climb up the social ladder? Haha. She was quite pitiful when she thought about it. She felt much better when she thought about it this way. Forget it. She's Gu Xingze's female companion now, after all. I can't turn him down. Li Chengze furrowed his brows disapprovingly. Isn't it just a woman? Why? He's Gu Xingze. What kind of woman doesn't he have? What kind of woman can't wait to get close to him? There are so many women who want to climb into his bed. Why would he care about this one? Yi Minglan glanced at him coldly and muttered, "I've never seen Xingze with a female companion, and I've never seen him dote on a woman so much. You haven't seen him at the Western restaurant just now. It was the first time I saw him cut a steak for a woman. It seems that Xingze has special feelings for this woman. At first, when she saw Yun Shishir, she thought that she was some rich young lady, but she couldn't remember who she was. In the upper-class society of the capital, she had interacted with all the rich and famous ladies, but she really did not have any impression of her. But from the looks of it now, she was probably just a newbie in the entertainment industry who was eager to climb up the social ladder. A young model? Actor? She was definitely not the daughter of a rich family." Li Chengze looked displeased. Yi Minglan added, "I advise you to give up on this woman as soon as possible." When he heard this, he coldly snorted, but did not care. Women were all the same, since she could climb into Mu Yaja's bed. And now she was beside Gu Xingze. Why couldn't she climb into his bed? At most, he would wait until Gu Xingze got tired of her and kicked her away. It wouldn't be too late for him to make his move then. She was such a sweet stunner. Even if she was a leftover from Mu Yaja and Gu Xingze, he wouldn't mind. Chapter 549. Ever since Gu Xingze entered the booth, it was as if a bucket of cold water had been poured over the originally lively atmosphere. Although they were about the same age as Gu Xingze, and some were even older than him, they were all playboys and rich young masters who loved to have fun. Originally, it was Yi Minglan's birthday and they came to the bar to make a scene. The atmosphere was originally quite good, but when Gu Xingze sat here, the atmosphere immediately became a little strange. This man was clearly in his 20s and looked young and handsome. However, his aura was mature and steady. His face was cold and his eyes were cold and emotionless. He did not smile and his whole body emitted a low and distant aura. Even the smile on Yi Minglan's face gradually froze. Li Chengze was still the smart one. Seeing that the atmosphere was a little cold, he naturally changed the topic to Yun Shishir. Ah, who's this female companion beside Xingze? She's so beautiful. When Yun Shishir heard someone mention her, she looked up awkwardly and glanced at Li Chengze. Her doe-like gaze made him a little impatient. If she was not Gu Xingze's female companion, he was really afraid that he would not be able to control himself and pull her into his arms and ruthlessly ravage her pink lips. Just as Li Chengze's voice fell, the others came to life and started praising her one by one. These praises came from the bottom of their hearts. It was undeniable that Yun Shishir was the type that could easily move a man's heart. Pure and lovely. As long as one was a man who could resist her. Li Chengze smiled gently at her and kept his usual frivolous appearance. He asked gently, "My name is Li Chengze. You can just call me Chengze. May I know your name?" When Yun Shishir heard him ask for her name, she frowned slightly but hesitated and did not dare to speak. In her heart, she was extremely repulsed by this man's conversation. In fact, she did not even like this man. Perhaps it was because she felt that he was frivolous, which made her dislike him very much. Li Chengze's heart was a little itchy. This girl was really afraid of strangers. He wondered what she was like in bed. Was she loose? Or was she as sweet as her appearance? It was not that he had not played with innocent girls before, but most of them were pretentious and vain. Unfortunately, Yun Shishir was so natural and pure. Seeing that she did not answer, his voice became gentler. "Don't be shy. I don't mean anything else." Hearing him say this, he did not seem to have any ill intentions. Yun Shishir bit her lips and said plainly, "My name is Yun Shishir." Her voice was soft, gentle, and pleasant to the ears like a clear spring, pleasing to the ear and light. Li Chengze smiled, revealing his white teeth. His eyes were filled with intimacy. "Haha, what a nice name. Can you be my friend?" Gu Xingze glanced at Li Chengze from the corner of his eyes. His lips curled up slightly as he suddenly raised his chin. Without waiting for Yun Shishir's response, he lazily stretched out his arm and domineeringly wrapped it around her shoulders, pulling her to his side. Everyone present immediately understood in their hearts, and they couldn't help but withdraw their thoughts. This action was an invisible warning and declaration to prevent others from trying to take a share of her. He was protecting her. Chapter 550. In their eyes, Gu Xingze was too arrogant. Coupled with his prominent status, he looked cold and aloof, making him unapproachable. Moreover, they were not on the same level as Gu Xingze. One was the sky while the other was the earth. Thus, Gu Xingze and Yun Shishir gradually formed a barrier in the booth. The others chatted and laughed. A few of the rich boys hugged their female partners and played finger-guessing games. Gu Xingze did not like noisy atmospheres to begin with and found them boring. Yun Shishir sat at the side and looked at the people around her. She suddenly felt that she was in a different world from this group of people. Yi Minglan squeezed Yun Shishir to Li Chengze's side and sat next to Gu Xingze. She was obviously creating an opportunity for Li Chengze. Yi Minglan poured a glass of Hennessy for Gu Xingze and glanced at Yun Shishir with disdain from the corner of her eyes. Yun Shishir turned her face inadvertently and sensed the hostility in Yi Minglan's eyes. She could not help but be stunned. She was sitting here doing nothing. Why did this woman's eyes look so sharp? Yun Shishir felt uncomfortable. However, Yi Minglan regained her bright smile in the blink of an eye. It was as if the coldness in her eyes was just an illusion. Yun Shirshir could not sit still. She could not wait to end it and be free. She turned her head and looked at Gu Xingze. She saw him pick up the glass and drink the Hennessy in one gulp under Yi Minglan's pestering. He looked a little annoyed. She thought to herself that he must be bored too. Xingze, today is my birthday. Do you have a gift for me? Yi Minglan suddenly hooked her arm around Gu Xingze's arm. She seemed a little drunk after drinking a few glasses of wine. She leaned her head on his shoulder and acted coquettishly. It was too rushed, so I didn't prepare anything. Gu Xingze smiled and said. As soon as he finished speaking, a few people at the side started to jeer loudly. Drink as punishment. Drink as punishment. Drink as punishment. Since you didn't prepare a gift, you should at least drink a glass of wine as punishment. The Sister Minglan's birthday tonight. Young Master Gu, you forgot to prepare a present. Yi Minglan immediately gestured for them to stop. She turned to look at Gu Xingze and stammered. Of course we have to drink as punishment, but you should at least give me a gift, right? At this moment, the singing on the stage stopped abruptly. At the end of the song, the band gave their thanks and left the stage. Encore! Encore! The audience below the stage was in high spirits, and they all asked for a return performance. Yi Minglan suddenly smiled coquettishly and said to Gu Xingze, Xingze, didn't you release a new EP recently? Can you make an exception and play a song for me tonight? As soon as he finished speaking, Li Chengze immediately whistled. Wow, Xingze, please perform a song. Gu Xingze turned to look deeply at Yun Shirshir. The latter was slightly taken aback, but her lips curled into a smile and her eyes signaled him not to bother about her. Gu Xingze retracted his gaze and glanced at Yi Minglan. He then raised his glass of Hennessy and drank it in one gulp. As the crowd cheered, he stood up and said to Yi Minglan, Okay, I'll sing a song for you. Wow, that's great. Sister Minglan is indeed impressive. Gu Xingze walked up the stage, and a band immediately went up to play for him. He turned around and briefly communicated with a few musicians. Then he sat on a chair and held the microphone. Chapter 551. He turned around and exchanged a few words with the musicians. Then he sat down on the chair and held the microphone. His handsome face was exposed on the stage, and the people under the stage made a burst of excited discussion. Gu Xingze? Oh my God! Why is Heavenly King Gu here? I'm so excited. This is the first time I've seen Gu Xingze in person. He looks so good. On the stage, Gu Xingze suddenly looked up. His gaze seemed to penetrate the crowd and landed on someone in the booth. His lips curved into a charming smile, and his eyes were full of affection. Oh my God! Look! Gu Xingze is looking at me. Yi Minglan saw Gu Xingze looking at her. She stood up excitedly and spoke with pride and contentment. Soon, someone echoed, That's right. Heavenly King Gu is looking at Sister Minglan. Heavenly King Gu doesn't like Sister Minglan, does he? Look at Heavenly King Gu's eyes. Oh my God! They're so affectionate. If he looks at me like that, my heart will melt. Amidst the noise, Yun Shirshir looked at Gu Xingze on the stage. However, he seemed to be looking at her too. His eyes were gentle and affectionate as they looked at each other across the air. Her heart was in a mess. She pursed her lips and lowered her head. Seeing her reaction, Gu Xingze smiled and snapped his fingers. The prelude of a rhythmic drum beat and the guitar played softly. You're obviously angry, but you're still smiling. The audience suddenly quieted down after the first sentence. A languid yet extremely magnetic low and mellow voice resounded through the entire venue through the microphone. The enchanting and dreamy male bass voice was so emotional that it made one's heart go numb uncontrollably. This song was written and composed by Gu Xingze. He even arranged the music himself and included it in the EP. The EP had not even been officially released yet. Therefore, very few people had heard this song before. In addition, Gu Xingze's singing was intoxicating. The noise in the venue stopped abruptly as they listened attentively. The crowd is crowded, the weather is gloomy. I don't mind holding your hand, looking out the window at the street, with a clear sky. Write your smile in my diary over and over again. Study hard because of you. The world is so beautiful. Gu Xingze held the microphone and closed his eyes affectionately. When he reached the climax of the song, the dazzling rainbow sound was so enchanting that it was intoxicating. Wild cheers erupted from the audience. Gu Xingze sang a love song. The bright and refreshing tune, coupled with his clear and magnetic voice, simply couldn't be more suitable. The lyrics described a pair of lovers who were passionately in love. No matter when or where, they wanted to see each other. Every minute and every second of separation passed by slowly, and it was very torturous. But when they met again, it was as if the gloomy and rainy weather had become sunny. The entire audience quieted down as they were intoxicated by the beautiful and enchanting voice. Why do I like you? The passing of youth. I am still here. I won't leave you. When Gu Xingze reached the emotional part of the song, he gently closed his eyes. His flawless face was illuminated by the stage lights and was incomparably handsome. The audience close to the stage could even see his slightly trembling thick eyelashes, as well as his slightly furrowed brows. It made the young girl's heart unable to find a place to express her feelings. Coupled with the song, his stage performance was full of tension and captivating. Chapter 552. The sunlight has become warm because of you. How I want to become the warm wind surrounding you. White chocolate sweet words of love, deep breaths. I only owe you a sentence of I love you. The hour hand goes round and round. The moonlight outside the window still refuses to leave. Time is too slow. I am not used to it. Without you, actually. I miss you. Oh, actually, I miss you. The lyrics were warm, and many people were moved to tears. Gu Xingze looks so affectionate when he's singing. My heart is going to be drunk from his singing. He's my idol. I've been chasing him for 10 years. Xingze, Xingze, I love you. Yun Shirshir was in a trance listening to the song when a hand suddenly touched her arm and rubbed it. This extremely ambiguous action shocked Yun Shirshir. She retracted her hand and looked up abruptly, only to see Li Chengze gesturing for her to keep quiet. He lowered his voice and said, "Shoo! What are you doing?" Yun Shirshir stared at him in shock. She was disgusted by his invasive behavior. She lowered her head, and her hands were helplessly intertwined together. She pursed her red lips, looking like she was avoiding him. Li Chengze looked at the beautiful creature beside him, and his heart was naturally itching. I scared you. I just saw that you were in a trance. No matter how I called you, you didn't respond. How could he let go of such a good opportunity to get close to her? He immediately leaned over and said with a smile, "Good girl. Don't mind it. I just wanted you to drink with me." Yun Shirshir looked up and frowned. She saw that Li Chengze didn't hide the desire in his eyes as he stared straight at her face. She lowered her eyes unnaturally. Her lips were even redder after being ravaged by her pearly white teeth, and they were filled with a forbidden temptation. His gaze was almost transfixed. He secretly gritted his teeth. Such a girl had to be Gu Xingze's woman. It was too difficult to get his hands on her. If it were someone else, he would definitely use all means to snatch her away and protect her well to prevent others from peeking at her. Judging from Gu Xingze's behavior just now, he seemed to be interested in this woman as well. Although she was still Gu Xingze's woman now, that might not be the case in the future. It looked like he was just playing with it on a whim. Once he got tired of it, he would probably just throw it away, right? Since that was the case, she would be abandoned by him sooner or later. It would be better to leave a good impression in front of her so that he could snatch her away in the future and make her completely his. Now he could only endure it. At most, he would have a taste of her beauty. Although his heart missed her, he couldn't be too presumptuous. He didn't want to offend that man for a woman. Yun Shirshir didn't know what he was thinking. Li Chengze's gentleness towards her didn't seem to have any other intentions, which made her originally bad impression of him change a little. She felt that this man wasn't as bad as her first impression. He seemed to be quite friendly to her. She smiled, revealing 2 cute little dimples. I don't drink. That smile was like a pure lily. Li Chengze was stunned again, and his heart itched even more. The others saw that this was a rare opportunity. Now that Gu Xingze wasn't around, they all started to get restless. Chapter 553. Seeing Li Chengze like this, the others could only secretly feel pity. After all, the Li family was considered a powerful family in the capital, so they were still a little afraid of Li Chengze. Naturally, they couldn't fight with him over something good. Li Chengze turned around and saw her sitting there in a daze without moving. So he poured a glass of wine for her and pushed it in front of her. He smiled and said, "How can you not drink when you're at a bar?" Yun Shishir looked at the wine glass and shook her head. "I really can't drink. Not to mention drinking. Even on normal days, she wouldn't touch a drop of alcohol. Her alcohol tolerance was very poor, and it wasn't as if she hadn't learned her lesson. The last time at Huanyu's cocktail party, she drank a few mouthfuls of wine half-heartedly and was completely drunk after one glass." Li Chengze pretended to be disappointed and sighed. "Shishir, are you not giving me face?" Yun Shishir still expressed her reluctance to the wine and declined his offer. Li Chengze didn't know that she really couldn't drink well. Instead, he thought that she was deliberately not giving him face in front of so many people. The crowd roared with laughter. "This is the first time I've seen Chengze suffer in front of a woman. This woman obviously isn't giving you face." Li Chengze was infuriated. Under the influence of the people around him, he grabbed her shoulders and pulled her into his arms, not allowing her to resist. He fiercely pressed the wine glass against her lips. "Drink, otherwise, you're not giving me face." "I really can't drink," she insisted again. This man was obviously going to force her to drink. Yun Shishir's face was filled with disgust. As she struggled violently, the wine glass fell to the ground and shattered. The scene was silent for a moment. Everyone looked at each other. Li Chengze saw that she had such a big reaction and his face was a little embarrassed. He was a little angry. Is there a need to have such a big reaction? Yun Shishir was a little angry in her heart. She pursed her lips and didn't want to bother with him. Her indifference made him a little agitated. Li Chengze saw that her eyebrows were knitted tightly and her face seemed to be filled with disgust. He was also a little unhappy in his heart. This woman clearly didn't know what was good for her. He had only touched her slightly, but she had avoided him like a snake or scorpion. It was as if his touch was poisonous. Why? Could other men touch her? Why didn't she resist when Gu Xingze hugged her shoulders? Why couldn't he just have a drink with her? When everyone saw this, they roared with laughter. Now that Gu Xingze was not present, they began to speak without restraint. So Chengze has taken a fancy to this woman? No, this is Heavenly King Gu's female companion. Chengze. First come, first served. Besides, this woman doesn't seem to be very tactful. Yun Shishir raised her head in embarrassment. Looking at these unrestrained faces, her heart trembled slightly. When Gu Xingze was still around, they were still polite to her. Now that Gu Xingze had only left for a short while, they were already speaking so presumptuously. Could this be their true colors? Yun Shishir looked embarrassed and explained, "Xingze and I are just friends. Your name is Yun Shishir, right?" Li Chengze grabbed her arm with a sinister and ferocious expression on his face. "How much does it cost to sleep with you for a night? I like to have a price tag. It's just money. I can have as much as I want. Name a price." Chapter 554. Ha! What do you mean by that look? Li Chengze sneered. "You should be able to tell that I want to sleep with you. You're still pretending to be pure. That's no fun. What do you want? Status? You want to hook up with Mu Yaja and Gu Xingze because you covet their resources. If you follow me, I'll set up an opera troupe for you and make you famous. How about that?" Yun Shishir was stung by his mocking and humiliating words, and her face turned ghastly pale in an instant. She looked around and saw the faces gradually distorting in the smoke. At this moment, the most unrestrained side of human nature was laid bare before her. Wow! It's the first time I've seen Chengze so impatient. It's actually because of a woman. Someone laughed and jeered. Beside him, a woman stuck close to Li Chengze and said softly, "Young Master Li, today is Sister Minglin's birthday. It's rare for us to get together. Don't ruin your mood because of a woman." As she spoke, she handed over the wine glass with a coquettish smile and gave Yun Shirshir an ambiguous glare. Her words had a deeper meaning. Some women, born as commoners, have ulterior motives. Naturally, they wholeheartedly want to climb up the social ladder. "Young Master Li, why do you have to bother with such a woman?" Li Chengzi narrowed his eyes and took the wine offered by the woman. He shook his wrist and took a sip. However, he didn't say anything. He only looked at Yun Shirshir with ambition in his eyes. Yun Shirshir suddenly stood up, pushed the crowd aside, and left the booth without saying a word. The crowd teased, "Haha, she's angry. She looks cute when she's angry." "Young Master Li, is there a problem with your charm? This kind of woman can't be dealt with like what you did just now. Do you need me to teach you some heart sutras? Get lost." Li Chengzi was unhappy and took a big gulp of wine. When Gu Xingzi walked off the stage, the applause was thunderous and the cheers lasted for a long time. When he returned to the booth, he looked around but didn't see Yun Shirshir. He was stunned. "Where is he?" Everyone looked at each other. Li Chengzi turned his face away in annoyance. Yi Minglan looked around and laughed dryly. "He probably went to the washroom. I'll go look for her." Yi Minglan immediately came up and pretended to be unhappy. "I already said that she went to the toilet. What's wrong? Do you think we bullied her?" "Xingzi, it's not that I want to nag at you, but you're here to celebrate my birthday. You're embarrassing me like this." "Face." Gu Xingzi looked slightly displeased. "Haven't I given you enough face?" Yi Minglan looked slightly awkward. "Xingzi, I didn't mean anything else. Don't misunderstand. You should know when to stop." Gu Xingzi pushed her away and left the booth. The atmosphere instantly dropped to the freezing point. Yi Minglan felt wronged and her eyes turned red. Immediately, people surrounded her. "Sister Yi, don't be angry. Tonight is your birthday party. Let's drink. Let's drink." Someone immediately agreed. However, Yi Minglan, who was sitting at the head of the table, was no longer in the mood. When she walked into the washroom, Yun Shirshir was dizzy from the heavy metal music in the bar. Her ears were ringing. Li Chengzi's arrogant words still echoed in her ears. Yun Shirshir bit her lip hard. She felt disgusted. Chapter 555. Next time, she would never come to such an occasion again. "Yun Shirshir." A familiar voice came from behind her. Yun Shirshir turned her head and saw Mu Wanru, who was wearing a sexy long dress, standing behind her with an arrogant posture and staring coldly at her. "Mu Wanru." Yun Shirshir's face turned pale and anger appeared in her eyes. "It's her? How dare this woman appear in front of her?" The two women looked at each other in silence. The confrontation seemed to have returned to 15 years ago in the welfare home. Mu Wanru stood arrogantly in front of her and accused her of being a thief. All the humiliation of the past appeared in front of her eyes. At the thought of how this woman had caused her to bear the crime for so long, she gritted her teeth and clenched her fists by her sides. "I didn't expect you to be here too." Mu Wanru took the lead to speak. She walked slowly in front of her and stared at her coldly. "Go back to your slum. This is not a place for a commoner like you to set foot in." "Ah, Mu Wanru, how dare you talk to me like that? Go back to your slum. What an arrogant tone. Shouldn't I be the one saying that to you?" Yun Shirshir raised her head and laughed in anger. "You don't have the right to say that to me, right?" Mu Wanru's face was slightly shocked. She was surprised by her strength. In the past, she had a cowardly look that could be bullied by anyone. But now, she was different from before. The mockery and ridicule on Yun Shirshir's face seemed to tear apart the aristocratic skin that she had covered up so well. In front of her, Mu Wanru could not pretend to be elegant and an embarrassed expression appeared on her face. "You're a thief. 15 years ago, you stole my jade pendant and stole the sky to be recognized by the Mu family. Now you're arrogantly coming to show off in front of me. Mu Wanru, you're more shameless than I thought," Yun Shirshir said with a sneer on her face. She took a step forward and stretched out her hand. "Give it back to me. Return what to you?" Mu Wanru retorted with a smirk upon hearing this. Give me back the keepsake that my mother left for me. My innocence. My identity. Yun Shirshir's gaze was firm and her expression was resolute. Give it back to you? Mu Wanru snorted disdainfully, as if she thought her words were a joke. You keep saying that I'm a thief. May I ask who would believe you? Yun Shirshir was taken aback and her expression instantly froze. Tell me, who would believe you? Mu Yaja? Or someone else in the Mu family? Do you think they would believe a woman who came out of nowhere with an unknown background? Mu Wanru seemed to be mocking her for overestimating herself. Step by step, she approached her and stood in front of her. She said condescendingly, Yun Shirshir, you're stupid, so don't blame me for being ruthless. Why don't you think about it? 15 years ago, why did all the children believe me and not you? Why did they all believe you? Do you need me to say it out loud? Yun Shirshir said expressionlessly. Mu Wanru's face froze. She did not understand what she meant. What do you mean by that? Mu Wanru, I just found out that you're really cheap to the bone. You've been using despicable means since you were young. Yun Shirshir looked at her as if she was looking at something disgusting. Her eyes were filled with disgust. Do you think I don't know what kind of shady business you have with the dean? Chapter 556. Did I hit the nail on the head? You don't know what nonsense you're talking about. Mu Wanru's voice was gloomy and filled with panic. Yun Shirshir's lips curled slightly as she said indifferently, Do you dare to deny the improper relationship between you and the director? Mu Wanru rejected her forcefully. What improper relationship? Do you think I don't know? What happened between you and him? I don't need to say it out loud. I find it disgusting. The moment she thought of the scene she had unintentionally stumbled upon when she was young, she did not know what she and the director were doing. When she grew up, she understood the matters between men and women. Then, she suddenly remembered what they were doing. Mu Wanru tried her best to cover up her unbearable past. Now that she had exposed it so blatantly, she flew into a rage out of humiliation and rushed in front of her. She grabbed her by the neck and pinned her against the wall with a twisted and ferocious expression. What do you know? What did you see? She used so much strength that it was almost suffocating. Yun Shirshir's face turned red from being choked by her. She almost instinctively kicked her leg. Mu Wanru then hurriedly pushed her away. Cough, cough, cough. Yun Shirshir paused and raised her head. Her eyes were bloodshot. Is it because I know too much that you want to kill me to silence me? Just like 15 years ago. Yun Shirshir unconsciously said the words, to silence you. Mu Wanru was startled by her guilty conscience. She instinctively raised her head and glared fiercely at her. Her eyes were filled with viciousness. It was as if a sharp sword was piercing towards her. She knew? Could it be that she already knew who was the one behind the assassination at the amusement park that day? For a moment, Mu Wanru could not figure her out. Yun Shirshir did not seem to know what she was feeling guilty about. She only said slowly, A few years ago, the director committed the crime of molesting children and was sent to prison. On the surface, he was well dressed, but in reality, he was a beast dressed in human clothing. How many children had been destroyed by him? But Mu Wanru, you are different. The children all avoid him like he's a snake or a scorpion, but you're sticking to him in exchange for benefits. Yun Shirshir's words were so straightforward that Mu Wanru's face turned ghastly pale. She paused for a moment before continuing. That day in the bathroom, I bumped into you guys, so you deliberately took revenge. You were afraid that I would reveal this matter and threaten your image and status in the hearts of the children. So you couldn't wait to suppress me, right? So that's why you pushed me into the pond that night as if you didn't mean to? I stood out to testify, but no one believed me. Why? Because in the hearts of all the teachers and children, you are as pure and flawless as a princess. No one would believe that you would do such a thing. Even if you stole my jade pendant, everyone will only suspect that I deliberately framed you. Mu Wanru glared at her with bloodshot eyes, her shoulders trembling uncontrollably. Yun Shirshir, shut up. Chapter 557. Mu Wanru screamed at the top of her lungs. Shut up. Yun Shirshir. Shut up. Have you said enough? Is it enough? Not enough. Yoon Shirshir interrupted her expressionlessly as her lips curled into a cold arc. Shouldn't I be asking you this? More than 10 years, it should be enough. Aren't you going to return the things that don't belong to you to its rightful owner? Mu Wanru clenched her fists tightly. Suddenly, she let out a shrill laugh. A look of disdain surfaced on her heavily made-up face. Who's going to believe your words? I am the real young madam of the Mu family, now and in the future. Yoon Shirshir, you don't have the right to fight with me. Yoon Shirshir's eyes were as cold as ice, but she said coldly, yes, I don't have the right to fight with you because these things originally belonged to me. She slowly walked towards Mu Wanru until she was right in front of her. Yoon Shirshir suddenly grabbed Mu Wanru's collar and gave her a tight slap across her face. The one who doesn't have the right to fight with me is you. Mu Wanru was shocked and angry after being slapped so suddenly. The anger in her eyes was about to burst out. You dare to hit me? Why wouldn't I dare? Yoon Shirshir's lips were cold as she gave her another slap across her face. Mu Wanru grabbed her collar with the back of her hand. But for some reason, Yoon Shirshir looked weak, but no matter how Mu Wanru pushed her, she didn't move at all. What Mu Wanru didn't know was that Yoon Shirshir had learned some judo when she was young. Even if she didn't master it, it was easy for her to deal with a weak woman like Mu Wanru. Yoon Shirshir, you dare to hit me, you will regret it. Regret? I'm just teaching a B***** lesson. Why would I regret it? Yoon Shirshir raised her hand high, her eyes filled with sorrow. How dare you? I dare you to hit me. Mu Wanru threatened in a shrill voice. I'm pregnant now. If you dare to hit me, can you bear the consequences? Yoon Shirshir's eyes froze and her movements froze in an instant. Her face seemed to have frozen. What? Didn't you hear me clearly? I'm pregnant. If you hit me and hurt the baby in my belly, can you afford the consequences? Mu Wanru saw her stiff expression and smiled proudly. Are you trying to trick me again? You were diagnosed with infertility a long time ago. Yoon Shirshir obviously didn't believe her words so easily. Why would I lie to you? Didn't you see it last time? I just found out that I have morning sickness. Mu Wanru admired Yoon Shirshir's cold expression with satisfaction. Even though she said that she didn't believe her, her eyes clearly showed that she didn't believe her. You don't believe me, right? Weren't you diagnosed with infertility? Yoon Shirshir stared straight at her, trying to find a trace of suspicion on her face. Don't doctors make mistakes in their diagnoses? Mu Wanru deliberately provoked her and pretended to be happy. I didn't dare to believe it at first, but it's the truth. Yoon Shirshir, I'm pregnant. I'm pregnant with Mu Yaja's flesh and blood. The expression on Yoon Shirshir's face cracked bit by bit. The despair in her heart was like a tidal wave, swallowing up the last bit of faith she had left. Chapter 558. Yoon Shirshir stared straight at her. Her face was so pale that it was drained of blood. Mu Wanru stared at the change of expression on her face and suddenly laughed mockingly. It can't be, Yoon Shirshir? Don't tell me you've fallen in love with him? Do you think he really loves you? Do you think he really cares about you? He's just playing with you. Mu Wanru appreciated the expression on her face gradually turning cold as if her heart was dead. She felt even more proud. Men always say sweet words to women. The words they say are sweeter than honey. But when they're heartless, it's like stabbing a knife into your heart. Will you actually believe a man's sweet words? He already has a fiancée, and that's me. Will you believe a man like him? The cold and mocking words were undoubtedly a cold thorn that pierced into her heart and made her bleed. Yoon Shirshir looked like she was struggling. She forced herself to ignore Mu Wanru's words and only thought that she was trying to drive a wedge between them. But, if he really has any feelings for you, then why didn't he break off the engagement with me? Mu Wanru smiled cruelly. Why did he sleep with me while having an ambiguous relationship with you and make me pregnant with his child? I'm the legal wife, and you're just a mistress who can't be seen in public. He slept with her? But didn't he say that she was the only woman he had ever had? Was it all fake? Was he lying to her? Yoon Shirshir's eyes were struggling and her face was flustered. She was skeptical of Mu Wanru's words. Obviously, she didn't fully believe it. Previously, he had an ambiguous relationship with you because he thought that I couldn't bear a child for him and felt that you were different from other women. He was just playing with you. Now that I'm pregnant, do you think you can still shake my position? You still want to be promoted? It's undoubtedly a pipe dream. Everything you have now is clearly mine. You're clearly the one who took away my things. Yoon Shirshir felt a lump in her throat. Her eyes were bloodshot as she stared at her blankly. Does it matter if it's yours or mine? The most important thing is that no one will believe you. Just like 15 years ago, no one would believe her. Yoon Shirshir bit her lower lip hard as the nightmare from 15 years ago flashed before her eyes like a merry-go-round. No one will believe me? Yes. No one will believe your one-sided words. As if hypnotized, Mu Wanru stared straight at her, cruelly enunciating every word. Everyone will only think that you're a thief, a mistress, a third party who interfered in someone else's marriage. Yoon Shirshir's hands fell weakly to the ground. With a pale smile, she was pushed away by Mu Wanru. She staggered a step and her body was caught off guard as she fell backwards. However, she fell into a warm and powerful embrace at the right time. Then, a firm and deep voice said above her head, "I believe you." Yoon Shirshir was awakened by the voice. Her blank eyes regained some focus. She raised her head and saw Gu Xing's calm and gentle face. His gaze fell on her pale and bloodless face, revealing a hint of indulgence. "I believe you." Even if everyone in the world doubted her and didn't believe her, he believed every word she said unconditionally. Mu Wanru saw that it was Gu Xingze and was unprepared. She looked at him nervously, not knowing how much of their conversation he had heard. Chapter 559. Gu Xingze raised his head and glanced at Mu Wanru. His voice suddenly became cold and gloomy. "Why aren't you getting lost?" Mu Wanru was surprised by his attitude. He actually yelled at her because of Yoon Shirshir? She immediately said angrily, "Gu Xingze, you actually get lost." Gu Xingze lost his patience. His eyes were cold and sharp. Mu Wanru's anger could not be quelled, but knowing the superstar's background, she could not be bothered to bicker with him. She had achieved her goal, so she was not willing to stay here any longer. With a snort, she stomped away in her high heels. Gu Xingze lowered his head to look at Yoon Shirshir. He saw that she lowered her head and her shoulders were trembling slightly. He called her name a few times, but he did not get a response. "Shirshir? What's wrong with you?" Gu Xingze was helpless. He held her face with both hands. When his fingertips touched her cheeks, he touched a patch of skin. Gu Xingze was shocked. He bent down slightly. Yoon Shirshir turned her face away. She brushed his hands away and avoided his touch. She lowered her head even more and turned her back to him. A trembling and forbearing voice came. "Gu Xingze, I'm fine. Don't worry about me. Go and accompany your friend." Yoon Shirshir bit her lower lip so hard that it almost tore through the skin. She endured and swallowed all the broken sobs into her stomach. She did not want anyone to see her in such a sorry and vulnerable state. It was so embarrassing. What was the use of crying? She was in a position to fight back. But when she heard Mu Wanru say that she was pregnant with Mu Yaja's child, she suddenly lost all her strength and the strength to fight back. She could not find any position to fight back. It was so unnecessary. She did not even have the courage to question the truth of Mu Wanru's words. She was afraid of hearing a devastating answer. Once a person was faced with something they didn't dare to face, they would always be cowardly. She didn't dare to think about it. She was afraid that she would be crushed by the cruel reality. It was only at this moment that she saw her own heart clearly. It turned out that she really seemed to have invested so much in that man, which was unexpected. Therefore, when Mu Wanru proudly announced to her that she was pregnant, she was immediately defeated. She didn't believe it at first, but after thinking about it carefully, Mu Wanru might really be pregnant. That day, she clearly saw that Mu Wanru did have morning sickness. It was a very real reaction, and it didn't seem to be an act at all. She had been pregnant before and knew that there were some things that couldn't be expressed through acting. That was a sign of early pregnancy. She should have thought of it earlier. Since she was really pregnant, if it wasn't Muyaja's child, whose child could it be? After all, she was his fiancée. Why couldn't he touch her when it was perfectly justified? Muyaja should have known. Mu Wanru should have been eager to tell him about such a good thing. Since he already knew, why would he still make such a vague promise to her? Could it be that her feelings were so easily played with? Yun Shirshir thought of Muyaja leaning against her ear and making those promises. She felt that it was extremely funny. She pursed her lips and raised her eyebrows. She wanted to laugh, but when the laughter escaped from the corner of her mouth, it became a trembling sob. You only know how to cry. You only know how to cry. What are you crying for? She gritted her teeth and wiped away her tears forcefully. She really hated being so weak. She really hated being so pretentious. But she wasn't a third party. Chapter 560. Hadn't it been like this for the past 15 years? She was already used to it. Mu Wanru was pregnant? So what? Did it have anything to do with her whose child she was pregnant with? She didn't care at all. She didn't care at all. She was just playing around with Muyaja, who was falling in love with him. I will tell the world that you are Muyaja's woman. Sweet nothings were just lies. Did she really believe it? It was all a lie, all a lie. It was all a lie. It was all a lie. Why did she believe it? Why did she really believe it? Did she believe that he would promise her a world? That he would tell the world that she was his woman? Promises were not credible at all. They were so fragile that they couldn't withstand a single blow. She knew from the beginning that a man like Muyaja was dangerous to her. He was a taboo. She shouldn't have any feelings for him. But she still let herself fall in love with him without hesitation. Did Muyaja know who Mu Wanru was? She probably knew about it. Gu Xingzi stood behind her. His eyes fell on her trembling shoulders. Even if he couldn't see her expression now, he guessed that she was probably sad. He didn't hear much of their conversation just now, but he vaguely heard the sentence. Everyone will only think that you are a thief, a mistress, a third party in someone else's marriage. He suddenly felt that this woman seemed to be hopelessly in love with Muyaja. She must care a lot about him, right? How much did she care about him? He didn't know, but it must be to the point that she was crazy with jealousy. When did it happen? He also cared a lot about this woman. Qin Zhou had told him about Yun Shirshir's background. 6 years ago, she was the surrogate mother that the Mu family had chosen out of thousands of people. That meant that she was the real biological mother of the young master of the Mu family. As for the reason why she did that, the reason she became a surrogate mother was probably because her adoptive father's family was in trouble. She was forced to sign the contract by her adoptive mother. Out of gratitude, she didn't reject it strongly. That was what Qin Zhou said. It was said that artificial insemination had failed at the beginning, so they had to use the most primitive method. For a girl to put down her dignity to repay her adoptive father's kindness, she spread her body under a strange man and was forced to do whatever he wanted. This girl was really stupid. He was hopelessly stupid. But what caught him off guard was that she was deeply in love with Muyaja. Gu Xingzi furrowed his brows. He suddenly reached out his hand and forcefully pulled her shoulder, forcing himself not to look at her disheveled expression. He pressed his hand against the back of her head and pressed her head against his shoulder. He raised his head and didn't look at how she was enduring the pain. He only said indifferently, "Be good, I won't look at you." Yun Shirshir's body stiffened, leaving only the sound of her breathing. "If you want to cry, just cry." Gu Xingzi's voice was as gentle as a feather. His thin lips blew on her forehead, soft and warm. "Crying doesn't mean that you're weak. You don't have to restrain yourself too much. Okay?" Yun Shirshir struggled at first, but Gu Xingzi was so strong that she almost couldn't resist. She buried her face in his shoulder and made an almost inaudible sobbing sound. His scalding tears almost soaked his clothes. Chapter 561. Gu Xingzi's heart ached because of this. He felt that this woman was hopelessly stupid. She actually put herself in such a lowly position because of a man. At the same time, he also felt that he was hopeless. Even though she had never looked at him, He still cared so much about her happiness, anger, and sorrow. He really lost to her. He was hopeless. Gu Xingze raised his face. His left ear was filled with the piercing metal music in the bar, while his right ear was filled with her low and careful sobbing. An inexplicable sense of powerlessness filled his entire body. He suddenly felt a little indignant. Thus, he held her face with both hands and stared at her face. "Can't I do it?" His low voice was extremely magnetic. His deep gaze was fixed on her face, and his brows were slightly furrowed. "Must it be him? Can't I?" he asked. Yun Shirshir was startled by his sudden question. She did not know what was going on. "If Mu Yaja can do it, I can do it too. I can also give you everything that he can give you. I can also give you what he can't give you or promise you," Gu Xingze said almost in one breath, then observed the changes in her expression. "So, can't I do it?" Yun Shirshir's gaze was a little dazed. Her eyes were wide open, and there were tears on her eyelashes. She couldn't understand the meaning of his words. The expression on her face froze because of the shock. Gu Xingze's handsome face leaned slightly closer to her face. His thin lips were printed on the corner of her eyes, gently kissing away her tears. Because of this unguarded kiss, Yun Shirshir's expression became even more stiff. Gu Xingze didn't stop there. His delicate and soft kiss suddenly landed on her eyelashes, sucking away her tears. Then, it landed on the tip of her nose, lightly touching it, like a dragonfly skimming the water. But just as his kiss was about to land on her lips, Yun Shirshir suddenly came back to her senses and pushed him away in a panic. "Don't be like this." Yun Shirshir's breathing quickened. She turned her body slightly to the side, unable to bear his sudden action. "I just treat you as my senior. I don't have any other thoughts." Gu Xingze was stunned for a moment, then smiled without saying anything. After a while, he said calmly, I know." He knew. Even so, he still wanted to fight for it. Gu Xingze's expression suddenly turned a little desolate. She looked at him, feeling uneasy and guilty at the same time. She could feel his feelings, but she couldn't face it calmly. Towards him, there was only admiration and respect, nothing else. Since he didn't have any, he couldn't get close to him and give him any hope, only to disappoint him again. She couldn't afford it. He saw that she was a little flustered, as if she was caught off guard by his sudden kiss. He reached out and gently stroked her hair. "I'm sorry, I went too far." "It's okay," she said uneasily. But in her heart, she was shocked by Gu Xingze's uncontrollable confession. Yun Shirshir turned around, struggling for a moment. Then, she looked at Gu Xingze's face and forced a smile. Let's go back." With that, she walked towards the booth by herself. Gu Xingze helplessly pulled the corners of his mouth and followed behind her. The two of them walked one after the other, but each had their own thoughts. If she turned around at this moment, she would definitely see the disappointment and pain on his face. Chapter 562. Along the way, Yun Shirshir lowered her head and walked forward, bumping into people from time to time. One of the men had just walked down from the dance floor. Yun Shirshir lowered her head and walked hurriedly, but she suddenly bumped into his arms. The man held her shoulders. When he lowered his head and saw that the woman who bumped into his arms was so pure and seductive, he thought that she was deliberately trying to attract his attention and throw herself into his arms. Yun Shirshir raised her head and saw that she had bumped into someone. She immediately apologized and wanted to leave, but the man grabbed her wrist. "What's wrong? Didn't you throw yourself into my arms? Why are you leaving? Are you trying to play hard to get with me?" When Gu Xingze saw this, he was slightly annoyed. However, she was the one who was annoyed. She only cared about lowering her head and rushing forward, leaving him far behind. It was as if she was avoiding him like he was a snake or a scorpion. Was she avoiding him? Was it because he seemed to have lost control of himself and said those words? He went forward and put his arm around Yun Shirshir's shoulders. When the man saw this, he wanted to continue pestering her. Gu Xingze lost his patience and kicked him aside expressionlessly. "Get lost. Don't get in the way." After that, He expressionlessly grabbed Yun Shishir's wrist and walked away. Yun Shishir was led away by him, but he used so much strength that it almost hurt her. Yun Shishir cried out softly in pain. She raised her head and opened her mouth, but she saw that his jaw was clenched. His thin lips were pursed, and his brows were furrowed. His eyes were filled with cold anger, and his expression was very unpleasant. She felt that he seemed to be angry, but why was he angry? She clearly didn't do anything. Gu Xingze, you're angry with me? You don't have to deliberately avoid me. Gu Xingze suddenly stopped in his tracks and looked down at her, interrupting her words. If you like me, you like me. If you don't like me, you don't like me. I just don't like to suppress myself. Yun Shishir was stunned. I won't force you to like me, so you don't have to avoid me like this. Do you understand? I know. Gu Xingze rubbed his forehead, feeling a headache coming on. He suddenly realized that he had lost his composure. I'm sorry. He practically carried her all the way back to the booth. He walked very quickly with his long legs and big strides. He walked in front of Yun Shishir, who was following behind him, couldn't keep up with his footsteps and stumbled. She allowed him to grip her wrist so tightly that it was as if he wanted to break her wrist. Back in the booth, the two of them sat down. Yun Shishir deliberately kept a distance from Gu Xingze and sat far away from him. Gu Xingze sensed that she was trying to avoid him, but he did not point it out. He thought that his actions just now must have frightened her. She probably didn't have any thoughts about him. From the beginning to the end, she had maintained a distance from him. Many newcomers who had just debuted couldn't wait to get close to him when they saw him. Many female celebrities even wanted to use his resources to climb up the ranks. However, this woman kept a distance from him when he tried to get close to her. Even if she wanted to make use of him, it would have been fine. However, she rejected him so cleanly, which made him feel a little dejected. Women were really hard to understand. The people in the booth were originally fooling around, but when they saw this man return to his seat with a cold expression, the atmosphere became slightly tense. Chapter 563. Even Yi Minglan couldn't help but be a little startled. She observed his tense expression and wondered who it was that had angered this man who had always controlled himself to the point that he couldn't restrain his anger at all. Yi Minglan saw that his expression was solemn and saw that Yun Shishir was sitting so far away from him. She thought to herself, could it be that the two of them had an argument? That was probably it. When they returned to the booth, the two of them didn't speak a word. Li Chengze was originally having fun, but because of him, it was as if a basin of ice water had been poured over his head. He had completely lost his interest and even felt like he was sitting on pins and needles. Now, Gu Xingze was just sitting there, but he could already feel this terrifying aura spreading to every inch of the booth. His aura was already overwhelming. Yi Minglan saw that everyone present was secretly sizing him up without saying a word. She couldn't help but want to ease the atmosphere, so she leaned over and poured him a glass of wine. She smiled and said, Xingze, what's wrong with you? As she spoke, she lowered her voice and said, just now I was too willful. Don't be angry with me anymore. Okay? I'll toast to you with this glass. After she finished speaking, Yi Minglan downed the glass of wine in one gulp. Gu Xingze didn't even look at her and downed the glass of wine she offered. The wine glass landed heavily on the table. He used so much force that the bottom of the glass almost cracked. Yun Shishir sensed that he had made a huge commotion and knew that he was angry. She felt wronged and guilty, but she didn't know how to explain it. She just didn't want to consume his feelings. Was that wrong too? Li Chengze sat beside her and Yun Shishir immediately sat further away. Li Chengze smiled and sat closer to her. Yun Shishir glared at him angrily. What exactly do you want? I'm sorry. Just now it was my fault. What I said just now was in a fit of anger. Please don't take it to heart. I have a bad temper, and when my temper flares up, my words are unpleasant. If you're still angry, you can scold me. Li Chengze begged for mercy pitifully. He poured himself a cup of wine and said with a smile, I'll finish this cup of wine first as an apology. Thus, he picked up the goblet and drained it in one gulp. He even showed her the bottom of the goblet, indicating that not a single drop was left. Yun Shirshir turned her face away and ignored him. Li Chengze immediately brought over a cup of mixed wine and smiled at her. "Don't be angry. I ordered a drink for you. There's a little bit of red wine in it. The alcohol content is very low, but the taste is very unique. It has always been this shop's signature drink. Take it as my apology to you." Seeing that Yun Shirshir was still ignoring him, Li Chengze said pitifully, "Please don't be angry. I was a jerk just now. If you want me to slap you, just say it. That's enough." Yun Shirshir sighed. "I'll drink it. But can you stop bothering me after drinking it? What a big tone. As long as you forgive me, I'll definitely stop bothering you. I forgive you." As long as he stopped bothering her, anything was fine. Thus, she carefully picked up the wineglass. The lemon-yellow liquid in the glass swirled gently, making her suddenly recall the nightmare of being drunk. That awful taste made her feel nauseous. Chapter 564. She couldn't help but take another sip. She licked her lips and suddenly understood why so many people loved to mix drinks. It was indeed quite delicious. However, even though the alcohol content was low, her cheeks flushed red after taking a sip. Li Chengze stared at her, and he was about to go into a daze. However, he didn't know that his actions were all seen by a pair of deep eyes. Gu Xingze glanced at them from the corner of his eyes. His eyes were dark as he lazily lifted the wine glass with one hand and pressed the edge of the glass against his lips. There was a hint of contemplation and judgment in his eyes. Unknowingly, it was already 1 o'clock in the morning. Perhaps it was because of the alcohol, these untactful young masters also began to try to talk to Gu Xingze. Loud music, enchanting smoke, a few rounds of greeting and sending each other off. Their ugly faces were full of hypocritical smiles. Who didn't want to have a relationship with the Gu family? In the past, they didn't have the opportunity. Now that such a person was sitting in front of them, how could they not be tempted? At first, they didn't dare to act rashly. However, after half a round of drinking, they became bolder. Gu Xingze leaned on the sofa expressionlessly. He coldly admired their dissolute behavior and found it really annoying. He lowered his eyes slightly and hid the playful but cold sharpness in his eyes. The corners of his lips curled up in a mocking smile. It wasn't that he was acting like a big shot. These rich kids really didn't know how to weigh their own status. They were young but ignorant and incompetent. They were addicted to the 5 poisons and relied on their parents' family business to squander money. They lived a life of drunkenness and indulged in a life of luxury. If such people were to step into this cruel circle, they would either become small shrimps that were swallowed by a big fish or become a chess piece that was controlled by others. One wrong move and the whole game would be lost. No matter how big the family business was, it would collapse in an instant. There was no need to be too close to these people. Raising his wrist, he downed the glass of Hennessy in one gulp. Then he stood up and walked to the side. He lowered his head and looked down at the little thing who was already curled up in a corner. He reached out to grab her arm and lifted her up. Then, he patted her head hard with his large palm and said in a low voice, "Let's go." Only then did Yun Shirshir open her sleepy eyes. She carefully tasted a mouthful of wine and then curled up in a corner. Seeing that it was him, she suddenly revealed an innocent smile. Her laughter was like a gentle breeze blowing through a silver bell, crisp and pleasant to the ear. Gu Xingze could not help but frown slightly, but he was a little dazed by this seductive smile. After getting drunk, she had lost the innocence she had when she was sober. Instead, she had gained an enchanting charm. Half of her face seemed to have been dyed with peach blossoms. She was beautiful and moving. She wobbled as she tried to stand up, but her legs gave way. She stumbled and bumped into his chest. "Ugh!" She moaned softly and rubbed the tip of her nose in pain. It seemed like it hurt. Drunk? He suddenly glanced coldly at Li Chengze from the corner of his eyes. The latter's heart skipped a beat because of this cold glance. This man's gaze was too scary. "Young Master Gu, I didn't make her drink. She didn't drink much and only took a sip. The alcohol content of that cocktail was pitifully low. It seems like she's allergic to alcohol. Li Chengze quickly explained. Gu Xingze ignored him. Chapter 565. As soon as he finished speaking, a few intoxicated men started shouting, "Young Master Gu, you're leaving just like that? We haven't put in enough effort." "That's right. Let's go sing later. Okay?" Everyone is looking forward to seeing young Master Gu sing. One of the men even reached out and held Gu Xingze's shoulder. His smile was a little lecherous. "Young Master Gu, are you planning to go back and indulge in the night of spring?" His gaze fell on the woman in his arms, and the meaning in his eyes was unclear. Yi Minglan was instantly annoyed when she heard this. These imbeciles! How dare they make a joke about Gu Xingze? The man was already very drunk, and his actions became bolder. He patted Gu Xingze's shoulder again and teased. "This woman isn't worth young Master Gu's effort, right? If young Master Gu likes her, I'll give you some women. I guarantee that you'll like her." Gu Xingze turned his face expressionlessly. He lowered his gaze and stared coldly at the hand on his shoulder. His brows were slightly furrowed, and his cold gaze was as if he was looking at something filthy. The man couldn't help but sober up a little because of his sharp gaze. He immediately retracted his hand and shrunk his head back in fear. Yi Minglan was extremely angry. She still had a sweet smile on her face as she said to him, "Young Master Gu, thank you for coming today. No need." Gu Xingze didn't even turn his head as he replied indifferently. He then pulled Yun Shirshir into his arms. Yi Minglan's face instantly fell when he left with her. She turned around and swept her gaze across the crowd angrily. She was so angry that she laughed. "A bunch of shameless idiots. What's wrong, Sister Minglan? Who made you angry again?" That's right. How did we embarrass you this time?" Yi Minglan pursed her lips coldly. "You're all really capable. How dare you say such things? You still want to claim your relationship with young Master Gu? What's his status and what's your status? Don't you know how to be more respectful? I'm really ashamed of you." Some people were unhappy when they heard this. "What do you mean by that? Isn't she just an actress? You don't know this, do you?" Gu Xingze was the young master of the Gu family in Beijing. Haha. He was just an illegitimate child because his status in the Gu family was not as high as his brother, Gu Jinglian. However, Minglan, your words are too harsh. That's right. Don't be so harsh with your words. It's your birthday today, so we're here to support you. But don't be so overbearing. Don't make everyone unhappy. Yi Minglan's smile turned colder. "What do you think? You guys are really a bunch of idiots. How dare you make fun of young Master Gu? You've really disgraced me." Li Chengze's mood was also ruined by her. He said unhappily, "Isn't it just Gu Xingze? Is it necessary to treat us like this for him? I just can't stand that brat. He's so arrogant." Gu Jinglian was the head of the Gu family. I've never seen him put on such a face before. What right does he have to put on such a high and mighty attitude towards us? Chapter 566. Li Chengze was also a little angry. He had been suppressing his anger because of Gu Xingze and had nowhere to vent it. Now that he had been scolded by Yi Minglan, he finally exploded and roared out, "Bah! Damn it! Yi Minglan, what do you mean? Young Master Gu is always fawning over him. What ability does he have? The Gu family? Haha! So what if he's from the Gu family? I heard that he's just the illegitimate son of old Master Gu's mistress outside. Does the Gu family think they can do whatever they want? Why? Does Gu Xingze think he can trample the Li family under his feet?" Yi Minglan's eyes flashed with disdain. Trample? Not just trample? If Gu Xingze had such thoughts, he could easily crush the Li family. Li Chengze saw her look of disdain and contempt and sneered. He said rudely, "Yi Minglan, my status is low and I'm not worthy of you. Okay?" After that, he took his coat and walked away without looking back. "All right, stop arguing. This birthday is so unlucky. Everyone, let's go." Sigh. Sister Minglan has high standards. We're not the crown prince of the Mu family or the young master of the Gu family. Sister Minglan definitely won't like us. Someone mocked and ridiculed. What do you mean? Nothing. We also think it's meaningless. Let's go. Everyone stood up. No one was willing to accompany them, which meant that the drinking stopped. Yi Minglan stood on the spot and looked at the people leaving. She was so angry that her whole body trembled. Outside the door, when Gu Xingze carried Yun Shishir into the car, she was already sleepy. She was curled up in a corner with her eyes closed. The air conditioning in the car was a little cold. He specially instructed the chauffeur to lower the air conditioning. The scenery outside the window kept passing by. The neon lights of the city were bustling. The nightlife of the young people had officially begun. Gu Xingze stretched out his hand and pulled Yun Shishir closer to him, allowing her to lean on his shoulder. He gently lowered his head and saw that her eyelashes were drooping. She seemed to be very sleepy. He raised his hand and gently brushed aside the messy hair on her forehead. Under the moonlight, her face was like jade and porcelain, bright and beautiful. But even though she was so close, there was still a strong sense of loneliness that surrounded him. Sometimes, the most strange thing was that the person you liked was clearly by your side, but you couldn't touch her heart. Gu Xingze raised his hand to touch her face, but the image of her hiding in the bar flashed across his eyes, and his movements suddenly stiffened. He smiled helplessly and slowly retracted his hand slowly. The moonlight cast a deep shadow on her face. Her eyes, which were covered by her bangs, were slowly opening. She was clearly awake. She was just pretending. Knock, 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 knock. The knocks on the door were exceptionally clear in the quiet night. Yun Tianyu immediately woke up from the sofa and hurried to the door in his slippers. When he opened the door, he saw Gu Xingze standing at the door with Yun Shishir in his arms. The little lad's expression changed. Mommy! What happened to Mommy? Gu Xingze's heart skipped a beat when he saw the little lad. His expression froze. The little lad before him had a handsome face similar to Yun Shishir's. Was he her son? Chapter 567. With that, he pointed to the TV screen in the living room, which was still flashing with light. It was currently playing a movie starring Gu Xingze, Bamboo Dragonfly, which was also directed by Lin Fengtian. Gu Xingze was stunned for a moment before his lips curled up. He had seen this child before, and he looked exactly like the Mu family's young master. He guessed that this child was one of the twins and Yun Shishir's son. What a smart little brat. Gu Xingze returned to his senses and smiled. You're so cute. What's your name? Yun Tianyu. The little lad obediently put his hands behind his back and nervously looked at Yun Shishir, who was in his arms. He asked quizzically, What's wrong with Mommy? She drank. The corner of his lips twitched violently as he felt a little angry. She drank again. Stupid Mommy. She obviously can't hold her liquor, yet she still forced herself to drink? Gu Xingze carried Yun Shishir into the bedroom. When he walked out of the room, Yun Tianyu was standing behind him with an autograph book in his hand, with an obedient and elegant smile on his face. He looked just like a handsome little gentleman. Uncle Xingze, can you give me an autograph? Hee, I'm your little fan. Gu Xingze slowly squatted in front of him and lightly scratched his nose bridge. He teased him. So, you're my little fan? Can you sing my songs, then? Yes, but Yu is tone deaf. My singing is terrible. Yun Tianyu's bashful look amused him. Alright, little cutie. I'll give you an autograph. Gu Xingze smiled when he heard this. He took the pen from him and signed his name on the autograph book. Thank you, Uncle Xingze. Yun Tianyu's eyes darted around as he tilted his head and asked, Uncle Xingze, are you filming with my mommy now? Yes, that's right. I'm your mommy's colleague now. My mommy is so dumb. Uncle Xingze, you must take good care of her. If mommy gets bullied on set, you will be so sad. The little guy held his chest pitifully and looked worried. Gu Xingze was secretly surprised. This little fellow was really different from the rest. Other children of this age were still immature and couldn't even speak fluently. However, this child was not ordinary. He had a clever look in his eyes, and the way he spoke was particularly pleasing to the ears. What was even more commendable was that he doted on Yun Shishir very much. She was a sensible and obedient child. Gu Xingze nodded and said, You, don't worry. Uncle will take good care of your mommy. I won't let anyone bully her. Really? Really? It's a promise. Yun Tianyu stretched out his pinky. Gu Xingze immediately hooked his finger with the promise of a pinky promise. It's a deal. Why did mommy come back so late today? Yun Tianyu asked in a roundabout way. Gu Xingze looked apologetic. Yes. Everyone had a gathering, so I came back a little late. Yun Tianyu heaved a sigh of relief when he found out the reason for her late return. Turned out that she had a gathering. No wonder she came back so late. Her phone was switched off and he could not get through to her. He was worried sick. Chapter 568. Yun Shishir raised her eyes to look at him. Her face was as white as a sheet. Yun Tianyu was slightly distracted. He nervously walked over and cupped Yun Shishir's face. His heart ached for her. Mommy, you don't look good. What's wrong? Did someone bully you? No. Mommy is lying. He fumed. Someone must have bullied Mommy. Mommy, tell you will bully them back for you. Yun Shishir forced a smile and opened her arms to him. Her voice was hoarse and broken. You give Mommy a hug. Yu's heart skipped a beat as he felt a stab of pain. He looked at Yun Shishir's face. The frailty in his eyes could not be concealed. He immediately walked in front of her and allowed her to embrace him in her arms. Yun Shishir gently rested her small face on the little guy's shoulder. With the child's warm and soft body in her arms, her cold heart actually regained some warmth due to this warmth. Yun Tianyu was nestled in her arms. Even though he could not see Yun Shishir's face from his angle, their hearts were connected. He could clearly feel her gloomy mood. He gently caressed her cheek with his small hand and said weakly, Mommy, you're unhappy. And Yu is unhappy, too. You're sad. And Yu is sad, too. Tell Yu who bullied you. Yu. Teach him a lesson for Mommy. No one bullied Mommy. You're so dark inside. Mommy just feels a little tired. Yun Shishir hugged him and took a whiff of his body wash scent. She calmed down a little. You smells so good. Mommy is so bad. You came back so late and made you wait for so long. Stupid Mommy. Didn't you promise Yu that you won't drink? Yu raised his head and complained. I'm innocent. Mommy didn't drink alcohol tonight and only took a symbolic sip. I'm not drunk at all. As she spoke, she even blew a mouthful of air for him to check. Yu sniffed her lips. Indeed, there was no strong smell of alcohol. Only then did he believe her. Mommy, you're not allowed to drink in the future. Not even a drop. I know. Master Yu. She suddenly cupped his face and rubbed her nose against his intimately. Yu, Mommy will be with you for the rest of my life. Will you despise Mommy when I'm old? No, it won't. Mommy will not be old. Then, if Mommy is old, will Yu despise me? Even if he despises me, it'll only be a little. Yu used the tip of his pinky as an analogy. She looked at him with disdain from the corner of her eyes. Mommy, you should be satisfied. Even if you are stupid and old, Yu will never leave you. Even if it's just a little, Yu still loves Mommy the most. Yu's cute confession made Yun Shishir burst into laughter. Alright, Mommy, go brush your teeth and wash your face. Then go to bed early. You still have to wake up early tomorrow to work. She obediently laid down her arms and surrendered. Alright, Master Yu. Mommy will work hard to earn money for Master Yu's marriage. Yu's lips twitched harshly. In his heart, however, he thought, who cares about Mommy's marriage money? The dowry he earns for her is much more than that. Chapter 569. The next day, Yun Shishir officially joined the cast. Early that morning, news about the opening ceremony quickly swept the headlines. The extravagant cast, top-notch production team, and the ambiguous relationship between the male and female leads became the hottest topic of the day. Several pages published photos of the male and female leads at the opening ceremony. Gu Xingze's handsomeness, Yun Shishir's purity, and rather good looks attracted enough popularity. The Green Apple had yet to be released, but with the help of the media, it became a hit. At the same time, the final photos of the Green Apple were released on the official Weibo account. Unlike other movies, which had relatively rough final makeup photos, the final makeup photos of The Green Apple could be said to be exquisite. Once it was released, it immediately attracted the attention of fans of the original novel and quickly became the #1 topic on Weibo. The author of the original novel even shared the post with high praise and said that she was looking forward to the movie. At first, Gu Xingzi's fans almost dominated the comment section of the official Weibo account, criticizing Yoon Shirshir. There was no other reason. Almost every female actress who acted with Gu Xingzi would be attacked by Gu Xingzi's fans. However, the final photos soon attracted the attention of loyal fans of the original novel. Whenever a novel was adapted into a television series or movie, it would attract the criticism of the original novel's fans. A novel was a novel, and readers would always fall into a beautiful fantasy. However, once it was adapted into a television series, if the casting was not good, the lead was not good-looking, the acting was flawed, and the script was not changed well, it would undoubtedly destroy the original novel. Fans of the original novel would naturally not buy it. However, Lin Fengtian's pursuit of a movie was extremely meticulous. When the male lead of the movie was announced to be Gu Xingzi, many fans of the original novel expressed their concerns on the forum. In the original novel, Yin Dongyu had almost crossed the screen from a teenager to a young adult. Gu Xingzi was already 28 years old, and many fans of the original novel were worried that Gu Xingzi would be too old to play the male lead. However, this concern disappeared after Gu Xingzi's final photos were released. Gu Xingzi's face was exquisite, and there was no doubt about it. What was even more heaven-defying was that even though it had been 10 years since his debut, it was as if he had grown in reverse. His appearance was no different from when he first debuted at the age of 18. The only difference was that the immaturity he had when he first made his debut had faded away. The current him had the demeanor of a heavenly king. After Yoon Shirshir's photo was released, it also attracted countless compliments. The original novel, The Green Apple, was a bestseller and had millions of fans. Many fans were worried that Lin Fengtian would use a newcomer this time. Yin Xiaochuan's characteristics were very difficult to replicate. There were some areas that could be made up for with acting. Yin Xiaochuan, on the other hand, had an aura that ordinary actors didn't have. During the audition period for the female lead of The Green Apple, fans of the original novel had launched a poll, hoping to see which female artist would play the lead role. As a popular starlet, Yang Mi's votes had always been high. However, the fans of the original novel did not buy it. They felt that the voting was too lousy. Yang Mi couldn't portray Yin Xiaochuan's innocence. She reeked of rouge and looked old. She didn't have the naivety of a student at all. However, when Yoon Shirshir's pure and refined final photos were released on the official Weibo account, the fans of the original novel were in an uproar. Acting as himself. This was clearly acting as himself. Chapter 570. Fans of the original novel were spamming the official forum of The Green Apple. Some asked for the name of this newbie actress who was playing the female lead. Some expressed their anticipation for the release of the movie and wanted to support it to the end based on the looks of the two main leads. Some supported Lin Fengtian and praised The Green Apple for being a production team with a conscience. They had put in a lot of effort in the casting and believed that the movie would be beautiful. Some hoped that Lin Fengtian would do his best to recreate every detail of the original novel. On the set, She kept scrolling through Weibo. She had previously applied for Yoon Shirshir's Weibo account, and in just a few days, it had gained 2 million followers. 2 million. Gosh, this is simply a miracle. One must know that gaining 2 million followers in a few days was already a huge achievement for a newbie actress. This meant that Yoon Shirshir's popularity was increasing day by day. It seemed that everyone was looking forward to seeing her in action. Yoon Shirshir walked over after her makeup was done. She thought that her assistant was watching an interesting video when she saw her sitting alone in a chair. However, it turned out to be a fan's message on Weibo. "What are you doing?" Yoon Shirshir whispered into her ear. She was startled. When she looked up and saw that it was her, she patted her chest. "Scary. Shirshir, you're here." "Ah." She stared at her intently. Suddenly, her eyes widened in disbelief. Gosh, Sure. You look so beautiful with makeup. Yoon Sure was in her junior high school uniform. She wore a white short-sleeved shirt and a grayish-blue pleated skirt, revealing her fair, long legs. She had applied light nude makeup on her face. It was impossible for a student's makeup to be too thick. She looked like she had no makeup on, but it was actually very thick. The makeup artist put on some light eyeliner for her, outlining the contours of her eyes. Her eyelashes were long and beautiful. Her lips were red, her teeth were white, and her cheeks were light pink. The entire makeup was as elegant as crystal, yet it was stunningly beautiful. Yoon Sure was amused by her. What do you mean? Don't I look good without makeup? Yes, but you look even better with makeup. Sure. I've decided that you'll be the #1 national goddess in my heart from now on. She was full of praises for her looks. Yoon Sure was curious to gossip. Who was your #1 national goddess before? Lin Ji. She blinked. Ganoderma lucidum? The image of the Ganoderma lucidum surfaced in her mind. Are you following the entertainment industry or not? Lin she's. Sure Lin Lingji. She's. Yoon Sure took out her phone. Her expression changed as she stared at the caller ID that kept jumping before she coldly swiped the screen to end the call. Who's calling? As she asked this, the phone rang again. To her Lingji do. To? She was stunned. Sure. Why aren't you picking up the call? I'm not picking it up. Yoon Sure's face suddenly turned cold. The phone continued to ring. After she hung up the call, she decided to blacklist the number. She's eyes widened. Usually, this would only happen after a quarrel between a couple, right? Chapter 571. At the Presidential Palace. Yaja was leaning on the sofa as he listened to the busy tone from his phone. He had made 3 consecutive calls, but they were all hung up. He was already fuming inside. When the 4th call was made, it was already unreachable. The 5th call. The 6th call. The robotic female voice informed him that he could not get through at all. Yaja's handsome face stiffened. His gaze fell on the phone screen, and his cold voice showed his displeasure. What's going on? Is the phone broken? Minyu, who was observing his expression, said, Cough. Boss, in this case, it's usually because your number has been blacklisted. Blacklisted? What does blacklisting mean? Yaja raised his eyes and asked in a dangerous tone. Minyu glanced at the man's icy face and carefully explained. Blacklisting means that the phone has a blacklist function. Once a number is added, it can't be called anymore. As the name suggests, it means that your number has been blacklisted, and you can't be reached. Bang! The crystal goblet on the table fell to the ground and shattered into pieces, causing water to splatter everywhere. Blacklisted? This woman. How dare she? My phone is broken. Give me your phone. Yaja threw the phone on the table with a loud bang. He asked for it from Minyu and quickly dialed a number. Beep. The call actually got through. Yaja's face turned even darker at this point. His face was overcast with gloom. Minyu stood at the side, trembling with fear. He did not even dare to breathe loudly as he was worried about the safety of his phone. After a long ring, the call actually got through. Yoon Sure's polite and gentle voice came through. Hello? Stupid woman. Why didn't you pick up my call? Yaja bellowed angrily. He believed her this time. She had blacklisted his number. This woman, how dare she blacklist his number? Woman, what do you mean by this? Did you blacklist me? After a moment of silence, Yoon Sure's nonchalant and dismissive voice came through the phone. Yes, I've blacklisted you. Minyu's heart skipped a beat. Oh God, Yoon Sure was so brave. How dare she provoke the CEO? Sure enough, Yaja's face instantly turned black. He suddenly stood up and kicked the high table. The beautiful and exquisite antique vase on the table fell to the ground and shattered into pieces. Woman, give me a reasonable explanation, Yaja said in a low voice. He gripped the phone so hard that it was as if he was going to crush the screen. Explain? Why should I explain it to you? I'm very busy. That's all. After Yun Shirshir finished speaking, she didn't give him any chance to say anything and hung up the phone. Damn it! Mu Yaja angrily called back again, but the call could not be connected. It was obvious that his number had been blacklisted as well. Mu Yaja's face was dark and his eyes were filled with anger. His number had been blacklisted, so he had nowhere to vent his anger. This feeling was really unpleasant. Asterisk bang. Asterisk he slammed the phone on the ground. He was so scared that he shuddered. Then he looked at the phone on the ground with heartache. His heart was bleeding. Chapter 572. Get lost. Mu Yaja waved his hand. He channeled all his anger into his fist and punched Min Yu's shoulder. The huge force almost dislocated Min Yu's shoulder. Min Yu immediately held his shoulder and retreated to the side. Even though his shoulder was in great pain, he still did not dare to move. He looked at the angry man in front of him in fear. In his opinion, Mu Yaja rarely got angry. He had always been good at controlling things. It seemed that everything was under his control without exception. However, Yun Shirshir seemed to be an exception. This woman seemed to be the only person that Mu Yaja could not control. Mu Yaja clenched his fists. His body was filled with a terrifying aura. It was a kind of fierce aura that almost penetrated the bone marrow. It was dark and oppressive, making it hard for people to breathe. Min Yu looked at the sharp eyes and suddenly felt a little suffocated and frightened. There was no doubt that this was an extremely terrifying man. It made people feel fear from the bottom of their hearts. Find out where she is. Min Yu immediately lowered his head and retreated. He quickly ordered his subordinates to find out where Yun Shirshir was. Soon the news came. He immediately reported the exact information to Mu Yaja. Chairman Mu, Miss Yun is filming today. Filming? Yes, director Lin Fengtian's film. The male lead, Gu Xingze, has officially started filming, Min Yu said. Mu Yaja frowned and immediately ordered, book a flight back to China. Min Yu was shocked and immediately asked, are we going back now? Now, go and book a flight right now. Min Yu was a little hesitant. But, Chairman Mu, about the follow-up of the acquisition tomorrow? Don't you understand what I'm saying? Mu Yaja turned around and looked up. The anger in his eyes was about to burst out in the next second. Or are you saying that even you want to go against me? Min Yu was shocked. He lowered his head and said in a trembling voice, I wouldn't dare. Mu Yaja glared at him fiercely. Book a flight. Now, immediately, right now. Yes. Beijing Affiliated High School. At the end of June, the middle school exams had ended. The film crew had to finish filming the middle school scenes as soon as possible before the summer break. When the crew was filming, they would film all the scenes in one scene in one go. After filming the scenes in one scene, they would continue filming the scenes in another scene. That was because setting up a set required a lot of money and energy, and it was impossible to follow the timeline of the script. Therefore, they had to follow the scenes. The actors kept changing their outfits according to the script and completed their scenes according to the script. The progress of the filming was unexpectedly slow. When it came to filming, Lin Fengtian was very picky and sought perfection. Therefore, whenever an actor's gaze was not on point, he would ask them to do it all over again. She remembered that there was once a school anniversary scene that took 2 whole days to film. This was because Yang Chong, who was standing in the first row, was often distracted. For the past few days, her condition seemed to be a little off. Her eyes were unfocused, and there were a few times when Lin Fengtian used the loudspeaker to scold her. There were a few days in June when the sun was still very hot. It was more than 35 degrees Celsius, and it was extremely stuffy. All the actors and actresses stood under the sun for a long time because of her mistakes. Those A-list actors and actresses still had the right to hide under the shade and relax in places where they could not be seen. Chapter 573. Because of this, many people had complaints, but they did not dare to voice out their anger. Yang Mi was a big shot and was not someone they could afford to offend. She got her hands on a small air conditioner fan from somewhere and blew at Yun Shirshir's face with all her might. She, on the other hand, was sweating profusely from the heat. Yoon Shirshir's face was covered with a thick layer of makeup. Now that they were filming outdoor scenes and the weather was so hot, she would have to wash it off and reapply it if she were to sweat and ruin the makeup on her face. For the few outdoor scenes, her shots were all close-up shots, so there could not be any blemishes on her face. If her foundation were to fall off and her complexion was uneven, the results would not be guaranteed and would have to be res-hot. Hence, she kept fanning herself with the small air conditioner fan in one hand and the fan in the other. Yoon Shirshir looked up at her and saw that her face was red from the sun. Her heart ached and she pushed the fan to her. "Look at you, you're so hot. Don't just blow at me, you might get a heat stroke." She was stunned for a moment and then felt touched. "Shirshir, I realized that you're very gentle to me. Isn't this how it should be? How many celebrities are gentle to their assistants?" she complained. "You haven't seen it. Many celebrities hit and scold their assistants casually. They'll slap them if there's a disagreement. It's tiring to be an artist's assistant. But Shirshir, you're so gentle and treat me so well." "That exaggerated?" Yoon Shirshir was speechless. "Do you know Yen Bingqing?" She lowered her voice and gossiped. Previously, an assistant accidentally guessed her skirt. In a fit of anger, she splashed hot tea on the assistant's face. That was freshly brewed tea, so it was very hot. That poor assistant's face immediately started to blister. Yoon Shirshir was dumbfounded. "That ruthless? What do you think?" She grinned. "But I'm lucky to be with you. Everyone is envious of me." Eft. Yoon Shirshir suddenly laughed. "Why, what are you laughing at?" She glared at her, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. Yoon Shirshir voiced out her thoughts. "Now that you mention it, it sounds like an ancient harem. Celebrities are like concubines, while their assistants are like little maids. They scheme against each other and compete with each other." Interesting. She could not help but laugh along when she heard that. "Haha, that's right. That's how it is in this industry." Yoon Shirshir's face broke into a smile, but her face turned icy cold all of a sudden. It was so cold that even his shoulders couldn't help but shiver. She turned her head in surprise and saw Gu Xingze standing beside her. He handed her an ice pack that was filled with cold air. "Here, brother Xingze, have you finished filming your scenes?" she asked cheerfully. Gu Xingze used to be Qin Zhou's artist, and she used to be his assistant. Hence, she and Gu Xingze were considered close. Gu Xingze nodded, opened a can of ice water, and took a big gulp. He also had makeup on his face and wore sportswear, which was different from his usual image on the screen. At this moment, he was as young as a teenager of 14 or 15 years old. He had fair skin, pure and clear eyes, and a gentle scholarly temperament like jade, but he did not lose his vitality and sunshine. He was stunningly handsome. She was mesmerized by his handsome side profile as he drank the water. Her heart thumped wildly. Chapter 574. What's there to be envious of? Yoon Shirshir mumbled. You can act with brother Xingze. Aya. A handsome man and a beautiful woman are a perfect match. The scene will definitely be beautiful. She's heart clenched in excitement. Yoon Shirshir, however, smiled and said, All right, stop fooling around. As soon as she said that, the stage supervisor immediately rushed over to greet Yoon Shirshir. Shirshir, you have a scene next. Get ready. Okay. Thank you. Yoon Shirshir nodded. She then tidied up her makeup in the mirror and got up to leave. She stayed on the spot, only to see Gu Xingze staring blankly at Yoon Shirshir's receding figure. There was a momentary daze on his handsome face as his gaze followed Yoon Shirshir's back view from beginning to end. His absent-mindedness, however, was keenly captured by her assistant. For a moment, she was also a little dazed. To be honest, sometimes when watching the scenes between the two of them, it was really hard to tell if they were acting or not. Sometimes, no matter how exquisite and meticulous an actor's acting skills were, acting was still acting. If one followed the production team all year round, it was easy to tell if they were acting or not. However, after these few scenes, she sometimes had an illusion. She kept feeling that Yoon Shirshir was acting. Gu Xingze did not seem to be acting, though. This was because she could clearly see the surging emotions in his eyes when he looked at Yun Shirshir. Love and love were intertwined. It was really hard to tell if he was acting or if it was real. Every inch of his gaze, every time they looked at each other, was filled with adoration. Even an experienced actor with superb acting skills would not be able to portray such a feeling. When it came to emotions, it was just acting. If it was real, it was real. Therefore, there were several scenes where Gu Xingze and Yun Shirshir acted together in one take. Even the nitpicky Lin Fengtian did not find anything wrong with them. Yin Xiachuan dared to love and hate, while Yin Dongyu dared not to express his deep love. This taboo and tangled emotional entanglement was performed perfectly by the two of them. It was simply carefree. Everyone was immersed in the drama. The crew members present were also secretly praising Yun Shirshir for her outstanding acting skills and Gu Xingze for his exquisite emotions. Only Mu Shi had a vague feeling that Gu Xingze was not acting. Could it be that he was too engrossed in the role and the fake became real? Was Gu Xingze interested in Yun Shirshir? It was late at night. There was only one scene left between the male and female leads. The scene was set in a music classroom. According to the plot, this was the place where the male and female protagonists first collided. In the plot, there was no one in the school. Yin Xiachuan pulled Yin Dongyu into the music classroom under the cover of the night and got him to teach her Chopin's Nocturne. Yin Dongyu taught her step by step. Yin Xiachuan sat beside him and looked up at his side profile in a daze. Suddenly, she leaned forward and kissed the corner of his mouth. Yin Dongyu was startled and the piano music stopped abruptly. Yin Xiachuan, on the other hand, could not suppress the budding feelings in her heart. She hugged his shoulders and pressed her lips against his. Their first kiss happened in this scene. It was almost one of the climaxes of the movie and was voted as the most anticipated scene by fans of the original novel. Lin Fengtian attached great importance to this scene. Originally, Mu Yaja had given an ultimatum to forbid Yun Shirshir from kissing and hugging scenes. Chapter 575. For the sake of the plot, the kissing scenes were all close-up shots. Every change in their expressions, Yin Dongyu's shock and Yin Xiachuan's nervousness, had to be vividly displayed through close-up shots. How could they film a double? Unless they found two people who looked exactly like them. Wouldn't that be too difficult? How could there be two identical leaves in the world? No matter how similar they were, a double was still a double. It was fine for the close-up shots, but it would not be able to fool the audience. Hence, Lin Fengtian took the risk and decided to act first and report later. For the time being, he would hide it from Mu Yaja and finish filming this scene first. Lin Fengtian's pursuit of acting had become an obsession. The set had already been set up. Yun Shirshir sat in front of the piano and gently tapped on the keys. Ding ding dong dong. A melodious sound of the zither flowed from her fingertips. She only played the right hand part and did not add any chords. The beautiful melody, coupled with the quiet night, gave rise to a romantic atmosphere. Gu Xingze stood behind her, sipping his coffee. Looking at her fingering, he suddenly said, "Your fingering isn't very professional." Yun Shirshir looked up at him and smiled faintly. "Yes, I learned the piano later on. I didn't practice the basics when I was young, so it's very difficult for me to practice." When she was young, Yun Yeching had enrolled her in an interest class, but she majored in the violin. When she entered university, she chose to minor in piano. Piano required a strong foundation and fingering, but these required a strong foundation from a young age. Hence, her piano playing could fool the average person, but to the professional Gu Xingze, her standard could only be described as ordinary. Gu Xingze sat down next to her and demonstrated the fingering technique. The fingering technique should be like this. You won't be able to play smoothly with this technique. Oh, he then corrected her hand shape. When you play the piano, it's like holding an egg in your hand, like this, he demonstrated once more. You seem to be very professional. Yun Shirshir smiled. Gu Xingze smiled. Yun Shirshir, I've been playing the piano for 24 years. Do you think I'm a professional? Wow, amazing. Yun Shirshir praised him from the bottom of her heart. You're just like Yin Dongyu in the original novel. You're both the prince of piano. I've always thought that men who play the piano are very elegant. A rare warm smile appeared on Gu Xing's face. Oh, is that so? The filming had not officially started, but the two of them were already in character. Gu Xingze was carefully teaching her the fingering techniques and the details of the performance. The cameraman at the side saw that this scene was very loving and quickly recorded it. He planned to post it on Weibo as a highlight of the movie. Lin Fengtian read the script while watching this scene. He lamented, "This is the feeling I wanted." He was satisfied with his choice and gratified. Although Yun Shishir was a newbie, there were very few NGs throughout the filming. He did not know if it was because she was comfortable with such a role, or if it was because she was born with the talent of an actress. Even though he was very strict when it came to filming, her spirituality when acting was simply admirable. A newbie like her was talented, elegant, and good-looking. Even the heavens would not tolerate her if she did not become popular. Lin Fengtian walked over with the script and seriously explained the scene to the two of them, including the facial expressions, eye contact, and other details that he required. Chapter 576. All right, everyone, get ready. The makeup artist immediately stepped forward to touch up their makeup. The script clerk brought the script board over and held it in front of the camera. The Green Apple, Scene 9 Action. Scene 9, Music Classroom. The night was dark and there were no stars in the sky. In the pitch-black music classroom, the window was suddenly pulled open and the curtains were lifted from the outside. The moonlight poured in, bright and beautiful. Yin Dongyu, played by Gu Xingze, leaned against the window and looked around cautiously. Beside him, Yun Shishir quickly got into character. Yin Xiachuan, who was playing the role of Yin Xiachuan, leaned against his side and curled up into a small ball. She carefully tugged at his sleeve and asked, "Brother, are you sure it's okay?" "Yes." The teacher on duty should have returned to the dormitory to rest. "There's no one in the music classroom," Yin Dongyu said in a low voice. Yin Dongyu lowered his voice and gave Yin Xiachuan a look. "Wait for me outside the door. Okay? Okay. Be careful." Yin Xiachuan nodded obediently and a mischievous smile appeared on her face. Yin Dongyu held onto the windowsill and leaped onto the windowsill. He nimbly flipped himself into the classroom. Yin Xiachuan quickly ran to the classroom door. Soon, the door opened from the inside and she saw Yin Dongyu's smug and bright smile. "Brother, you're the best." Yin Xiachuan cheered softly and excitedly as she entered the classroom. "Shoo, keep your voice down." Yin Dongyu was afraid that her voice would alarm the security guards. He reached out and flicked his finger on her forehead. "Ouch, it hurts." Yin Xiachuan held her forehead and glared at him coquettishly. Yin Dongyu exchanged glances with her. After drawing all the curtains in the music classroom tightly, he turned on a light. The warm light shone down. It landed on a beautiful and elegant Yamaha tripod piano. "Wow, what a beautiful piano." Yin Xiachuan covered her mouth. Her eyes were filled with amazement. She looked around the piano a few times and a touched smile appeared on her face. All the romantic fantasies she had when she was a girl surfaced on her face. When Yin Dongyu had been practicing the piano since he was a child, she liked to sit by his side and watch him play the boring music over and over again. She really liked that pair of hands that were tapping on the piano keys. Her fingers were long and slender, and her fingertips were like porcelain. She looked extremely beautiful on the black and white piano keys. The sunlight outside the window shone in, reflecting on his handsome side profile. Against the light, it was quiet and beautiful. She wasn't born with a love for the piano. Her obsession with the piano stemmed more from her infatuation with Yin Dongyu. Yin Dongyu watched helplessly as she circled the piano with her hands in her pockets. The corners of her mouth curved into a gentle and doting smile. "Brother, how much does this piano cost?" Yin Xiachuan grinded the piano frame like a believer praying and asked longingly. "It's very expensive." "How expensive is it?" About 200,000, Yin Dongyu said after some thought. Yin Xiachuan was completely stunned. Her eyes were as big as bells, filled with disbelief. "The sound must be amazing." "Yes, It's a piano specially designed for performance. Lin Fengtian looked at the image on the monitor and gently rubbed his chin. The plot was progressing smoothly, unbelievably smoothly. Chapter 577. Yin Dongyu's cautiousness and vigilance when he entered the music room through the window, Yin Xiaochuan's uneasiness and nervousness, and Yin Xiaochuan's amazement at the tripod piano when they entered the classroom were all vividly displayed. She completely portrayed the naivety and romance of a 13 or 14-year-old girl. Lin Fengtian sat in front of the camera and held his breath. When the shot ended, he shouted, "Okay!" The entire scene was shot without any cuts. Yun Shishir immediately withdrew from her role and walked to Lin Fengtian's side. She walked to the monitor and looked at the last shot. She sized up Lin Fengtian's serious and meticulous expression. Seeing that he was looking at the camera with a solemn expression, she watched the footage again from the beginning. She was a little nervous, afraid that he would not approve of her performance. "Director Lin?" "Shoo!" Lin Fengtian stopped her and pointed to her close-up on the camera. Then, he pressed the pause button and said to her, "Look at this close-up." Yun Shishir squatted beside him. Lin Fengtian replayed the tape for her from the beginning again. When it came to this close-up shot of her, Lin Fengtian hit the pause button and turned to look at her. Yun Shishir immediately understood his intention. The gaze is not there yet. Yes. Lin Fengtian felt that her comprehension was good. The gaze is lacking. Yin Xiaochuan's coquettishness towards Yin Dongyu is not fully expressed. The long shot is perfect, but when it comes to the close-up, it's lacking a lot. Yun Shishir filtered the author's description of this scene in her mind and repeatedly pondered over it. "I understand, Director Lin. Let's reshoot this scene." Yun Shishir nodded and immediately returned to her seat. Lin Fengtian took a sip of water, but he could not calm down the surprise in his heart. He was especially strict when it came to filming. On the set, he rarely praised anyone. Those who appeared in his movies, from A-list celebrities to unknown extras, were all treated equally. Which one of them had not been scolded harshly by him? On the first day of filming, Yun Shishir was often unable to grasp the position of the camera due to her lack of experience. She had a big problem with her positioning and often walked out of camera range. Because of this, he often lost his temper with her. Regardless of the fact that it was her first time acting, and that she was a newbie who lacked experience in positioning, she scolded Yun Shishir bitterly. Many people rejoiced in his misfortune, especially Yen Bingqing and Yang Chong, who were secretly delighted. In the production team, Yun Shishir was ostracized for two reasons. Firstly, it was because she was the newbie that Huan Yu was currently promoting. She was beautiful, young, and talented. Everyone knew that this newbie would definitely become popular. She just lacked an opportunity. And now, this movie was her opportunity. Everyone believed that as long as she was involved in this movie, it would not be a pipe dream for her to become an instant hit. This newbie was definitely going to be popular. Therefore, Yang Chong and Yen Bingqing were eyeing her covetously. He was afraid that after she became famous overnight, Huan Yu would throw resources at her and her status would rise. The competition in the entertainment industry was too strong, and there was a lot of pressure. It was not easy for an artist to make a name for themselves. Yen Bingqing had a sugar daddy behind her. In addition, her team was very supportive of her planning and packaging. Yen Bingqing practically relied on scandals and hype to get to where she was. Chapter 578. However, Yang Mi was different. She was a child star and entered the entertainment industry at a very young age. When she was 5 years old, she acted as a little princess in a palace drama. She was considered a child star with a lot of experience. However, she did not have any talent. Her acting skills were her biggest flaw. Her looks could be improved through plastic surgery. Without any scandals, she could create topics to attract attention. However, she did not have any talent in acting. This was an irreparable weakness. Yun Shishir's talent was much better than hers. Naturally, she was eyeing her. The second reason was that she was a newcomer but had already risen to the top with the role of the female lead. This movie was originally a role that Yen Bingqing and Yang Mi were fighting for. However, Yun Shishir joined the cast out of nowhere. The two who were originally enemies instantly became friends. As the saying goes, the enemy of an enemy is a friend. Therefore, after Lin Fengtian criticized Yun Shishir, the two of them ran to her in groups to ridicule her. However, Yun Shishir was a person who was not shocked by honor or disgrace. She did not take their exclusion to heart. After a night, she carefully pondered the problem of her positioning. On the second day of filming, she had made great progress. There were almost no major problems with her positioning. Even if there were, they were just small flaws. Under Lin Fengtian's guidance, they were quickly fixed. Lin Fengtian was very surprised by this, but he did not praise her in front of everyone. He wanted to praise her, but he could not. He rarely praised someone. If he praised her in front of Yan Bingqing, Yang Mi, and the others, it would definitely attract jealousy. Therefore, no matter how good Yun Shishir's performance was, he did not show it on his face. In fact, he was very satisfied with Yun Shishir's performance. It exceeded his expectations. It was even better than Gu Xing's. Lin Fengtian slapped his thigh. He was so excited when he thought about the upcoming kissing scene. He was looking forward to Yun Shishir's performance. This scene was quickly shot. Then it was time for the 10th scene. Lin Fengtian excitedly ran to Gu Xingze and Yun Shishir to talk about the scene. There weren't many kissing scenes in the novel. There were only 5 kissing scenes in the movie. In the script, the first kissing scene was between Yin Dongyu and Yin Xiaochuan. It was in this scene. Yun Shishir was originally prepared for the kissing scene. There were not many descriptions of kissing scenes in the original novel. However, when she heard that Lin Fengtian wanted to do a close-up of the kissing scene, her face immediately turned red. When filming this kissing scene, you must put your heart and soul into it. Yin Xiaochuan's naivety, nervousness, and thunderous heartbeat, as well as Yin Dongyu's uneasiness and helplessness, must be portrayed well. For some reason, Yun Shishir was lost in thought during Lin Fengtian's explanation. Mu Yaja's seductive voice suddenly rang in her ears. "Kiss me." Mu Yaja was the first man she had ever kissed. Before this, she didn't have any kissing experience. She clearly remembered his graceful stretching posture, his deep eyes landing on her body, and the corners of his lips curling up in an evil and provocative arc. He said to her, "Please me." When he asked her for a kiss, he would always grab her struggling hand and pull her into his arms. He would press her against the wall and seal her lips domineeringly, as if he wanted to steal all of her breath. He would kiss her deeply and interlock his fingers with hers. It was as if he wanted to melt into each other's blood and bones. Chapter 579. It was probably jealousy, as well as flying into rage out of humiliation. Yun Shishir. Lin Fengtian raised his voice and pulled her back from her thoughts. Yun Shishir immediately snapped out of it and asked, "What's wrong?" "Director Lin, you're distracted." Lin Fengtian looked slightly angry and knocked her head with the script. Yun Shishir stuck out her tongue in shame and said, "I'm sorry. Is there anything else you don't understand?" Lin Fengtian asked. Gu Xingze and Yun Shishir looked at each other. Lin Fengtian thought of something and said, "Shishir, when we're filming the kissing scene later, I'll use camera B to get a close-up of you. Be careful when you're in position and don't walk out of the camera." Yun Shishir glanced at the few cameras and then nodded her head. Lin Fengtian returned to his seat in front of the monitor. All departments in position. The script supervisor immediately stepped forward and announced, "The first scene of The Green Apple. Scene 10, action." Gu Xingze and Yun Shishir quickly got into character. This scene was very simple. When Yin Dongyu was teaching Yin Xiaochuan how to play the serenade, Yin Xiaochuan couldn't control her feelings. She wrapped her arms around his neck and kissed him. The main focus of the scene was the emotional changes during their first kiss. Yin Dongyu's retreat and Yin Xiaochuan's initiative. The most important scene of The Green Apple was none other than this. Yin Dongyu and Yin Xiaochuan were biological siblings, but they grew up together and were very close. Yin Xiaochuan had always been very dependent on Yin Dongyu and saw him as her world. There was a passage in the original novel that went like this. At the end of the day, blood ties are really a strange thing. It could bind two people together tightly, and it was the most intimate bond. But it can also mercilessly separate them from each other and create an insurmountable gap. When I was young, I used to be glad that I had an elder brother who doted on me. I used to think that I was the happiest girl in the world. When I grew up, I hated the fact that the man I loved so much had the same blood flowing in his body. She had walked all the way, loved all the way, and was wrong all the way. From ignorant feelings to immature feelings, to a strong desire to be together forever, until they were forcibly separated by the world. How far is forever? In a single thought, eternity was eternal. One wrong thought could lead to death at every step. Brother, do you know that even though the world is big, I have nowhere to go and no one to rely on? Whether it is God or anyone else, who can explain to me what love is? If no one can explain it clearly, then why can't I fall in love with him? In Dongyu was born during the coldest time of winter. In Shachuan, on the other hand, was born on the hottest day of summer. The personalities of the two siblings were like winter and summer. Not long after In Shachuan was born, the first word she would say was Big Brother. The first name that it recited was also In Dongyu's name. In Dongyu was 5 years older than In Shachuan. When they were young, their parents were busy with work and the family of 4 rarely spent time together. Hence, to In Shachuan, In Dongyu was the person she relied on the most. In Dongyu had delicate features and was very handsome. Therefore, there were many girls who liked him since he was young. Chapter 580. This coldness became more obvious during the rebellious period of his youth. From the beginning to the end, the only person who could freely get close to him was In Shachuan. Perhaps it was because they were blood-related, but In Dongyu doted on In Shachuan to the bone. Even his parents could not compare to this kind of love. The young In Dongyu did not realize that this sibling relationship had already undergone a qualitative change. This relationship had taken a fork in the road from the very beginning. In Shachuan's attachment to him gradually turned into possessiveness. The relationship between the siblings was so good that they even slept on the same bed until junior high school. It was only when In Shachuan entered junior high school that her body started to develop. In Dongyu was already in his first year of high school. After taking biology classes, he gradually realized the difference between men and women. Hence, he gradually distanced himself from In Shachuan. However, unlike In Dongyu, In Shachuan quickly realized that her feelings for In Dongyu had gone beyond the common sense of siblings. She uneasily realized that she and In Dongyu were not destined to be bound together. They would maintain this distance for the rest of their lives. And there was bound to be a third party between them. The thought of this third party unscrupulously occupying his arms, his chest, his love, and his eyes not only for her, his care and protection not only for her, plunged In Shachuan into an unprecedented panic. What made her even more uneasy was that she was extremely repulsed by this possibility. She even felt a deep hatred for this third party who had yet to appear. Once, when she saw In Dongyu returning home with a female classmate, her jealousy exploded. However, she knew in her heart that this feeling was not normal. It was immoral. Even if he was the first boy in her life to dote on her, and the one who doted on her the most, he made her heart beat like thunder and filled her with joy. However, she could not love him. In Shachuan had been trying hard to suppress this feeling. However, it was not until this scene that her love for In Dongyu could no longer be suppressed. That was how the kissing scene came about. In order to participate in the talent show, In Shachuan signed up for piano performance. As for piano performance, she was just an amateur and had not practiced since she was young. When In Dongyu was young and learning the piano, she would sit by his side and practice with him. In Dongyu specially sneaked her into the music classroom and taught her to consolidate her skills overnight. Ding ding dong dong. Chopin's serenade flowed gently from his fingertips. He kept his head down the entire time as he carefully adjusted her hands to the correct technique. In Shachuan's mind wasn't on the piano, but she was staring at his profile, lost in thought. What happened? In Dongyu looked up and saw In Shachuan staring at his side profile gently. He was momentarily stunned. Nothing. Okay, let's continue then. In Dongyu held her hand and guided it to the piano keys. In Shachuan suddenly held his hand tightly and refused to let go. She used so much force that he could clearly feel her trembling fingers. In Dongyu's heart skipped a beat. Her hands were drenched in cold sweat and her knuckles were white. "Brother, let's always be together, okay?" In Xiaochuan looked straight at him, hesitated, and suddenly said in a pleading tone. Chapter 581. When In Xiaochuan saw his silence, it was as if a thorn had pierced her heart. She felt a little suffocated. "Brother, I hate it when you're with other girls. Just like we promised when we were young. Let's be together. Okay? 100 years. A lifetime together." In Xiaochuan's face was filled with panic and helplessness at her childish pleading words. She was hoping that In Dongyu would hold her gently in his arms like he did when they were young and promise her, "Okay, we'll be together forever." But In Dongyu did not. He only pried her fingers away one by one with trembling hands. When he looked up, his face was pale and helpless. "Be good. Stop fooling around, okay?" "I'm not fooling around. I'm serious." In Xiaochuan got closer to him seriously and said anxiously, "I want to be with you forever, brother. Brother, haven't we always promised each other?" "Xiaochuan, we're siblings. One day, I'll have a girl I love. She'll be my wife. The person I'll spend the rest of my life with is that girl. Not you. Do you understand?" "Why?" In Xiaochuan's face instantly turned pale. When she heard the cruel words coming out of his mouth, her heart felt like it was being stabbed. Her eyes quickly moistened. She clenched her fists tightly. The despair in her eyes almost drowned her. "Then what about what you promised me in the past? Was it a lie? You made a promise." In Dongyu turned his face away with a complicated expression. He lowered his head and stared straight at the black and white piano keys. "I promised you that I'd be with you forever and never leave you. But not in this way, do you understand?" There was a moment of dead silence beside him. In Dongyu frowned. He turned around and was about to say something when In Xiaochuan suddenly came up to him. One of her hands wrapped tightly around his neck, and her small face kept leaning toward him. While he was still in a daze, In Xiaochuan had already cupped his face. She gently closed her eyes like she had learned from the shoujo manga and gently pressed her lips against his thin, cold lips. This was In Xiaochuan's and Yun Shishir's first on-screen kiss. Similar to In Xiaochuan, her kissing skills were also inexperienced. Half of her body was leaning on Gu Xing's body. Through the thin material of their clothes, she could almost clearly feel the warmth of Gu Xing's chest and his warm heartbeat. There was an inexplicable fragrance on his body. It was different from Mu Yaja's perfume. Instead, it was a natural fragrance. The moment she touched his lips, Mu Yaja's angry face suddenly flashed through Yun Shishir's mind. "Woman, how dare you betray me?" Betrayal? Who was the one who betrayed who? She gently closed her eyes, trying her best to erase that handsome face from her mind. Following the script, she hugged Gu Xing's neck tightly and leaned her body closer to him. Her kiss deepened and deepened. She pressed her lips against his and greedily sucked in his fragrant breath. At this point, In Dongyu should be struggling. He should be resisting with all his might, pushing her away forcefully, and breaking this out-of-control situation. However, at that moment, Gu Xingze hesitated. He widened his handsome eyes and could clearly see Yun Shishir's delicate and beautiful face in front of him. She gently closed her eyes. Due to her excessive nervousness, her shoulders were trembling. Chapter 582. Hence, she was so nervous that she was trembling all over. Even her eyelashes were trembling. The tears that welled up in her eyes quickly moistened her lashes and overflowed from the corners of her eyes. A line of clear tears rolled down her cheeks. This was undoubtedly a desperate and helpless kiss. Yun Shishir was completely immersed in her role. Every inch of her facial features, even her eyelashes, were full of dramatic tension. He stared at her with his eyes wide open. Even though he knew that she was acting and was fully immersed in her role, his heart still trembled violently because of this desperate kiss. His heart ached for her, and he felt a sense of reluctance and longing. Based on the character in the movie, he should have rejected and avoided the kiss. However, in his heart, It was difficult for him to push away Yun Shirshir's kiss. Gu Xingze couldn't help but reach out his arms, trying to embrace this uneasy and desperate girl in front of him. The assistant director, who was sitting beside the monitor, suddenly stood up with an ugly expression. Gu Xingze was out of control. According to the script, his next move was to push her away violently. Instead of hugging her, he was about to interrupt when Lin Fengtian suddenly tugged at his sleeve and pulled him back to his seat. "Director Lin?" He lowered his voice, obviously puzzled. "Shoo, don't speak." Director Lin was obviously surprised by the unexpected development of the plot. Even though there were some issues with the plot, due to a freak combination of factors, Lin Fengtian was surprised by the superstar's performance. "This is the feeling I want." Yin Dongyu also yearned for this kiss. He also loved Yin Xiaochuan, but unlike Yin Xiaochuan, who dared to love and hate, he was rational and would not allow himself to do anything immoral. Hence, when he found out that he had such strange feelings for Yin Xiaochuan, he immediately cut them off. He even went home with his female companions and kept a distance from Yin Xiaochuan. But even so, how could he not yearn for this kiss in his heart? It was this kind of contradictory handling that reflected the struggle in Yin Dongyu's heart. The struggle between ethics and feelings. Feelings were uncontrollable, weren't they? This way, the character could be portrayed more realistically and realistically. Zoom in and get a close-up of Yin Dongyu. Lin Fengtian added another camera. Originally, there was only a close-up of Yin Xiaochuan. It mainly reflected Yin Xiaochuan's despair and helplessness. Lin Fengtian added Yin Dongyu's camera, hoping to capture every change in his expression. In the camera, Gu Xingze's expression suddenly froze. He suddenly realized that this was all an act. His outstretched arms paused in midair. Then he pushed Yun Shirshir away and stood up abruptly. He turned around with a pale face, and his face was filled with disbelief and shock. Yun Shirshir was pushed away and fell on the piano. Her elbows pressed on the black and white keys, producing a discordant bass sound that was harsh and heavy, just like how the two of them were feeling right now. She stood up awkwardly and awkwardly. She laughed dryly and said with trembling lips, "Brother, why did you push me away? Don't you think this is ridiculous?" Gu Xingze wiped his lips absent-mindedly. He could still feel the residual warmth of her lips. How is it ridiculous? How is it ridiculous? Chapter 583. Can't I kiss you? You can't. Gu Xingze was immersed in Yin Dongyu's role. He said in a low voice, flung her hand away and walked to the window. "I can't either." "Why not?" Yin Xiaochuan stared at his back view with tears in her eyes. "I like you and you like me. Isn't that enough?" She screamed the last sentence, almost breaking her voice. Lin Fengtian, who was sitting in front of the monitor, was so agitated that he was trembling. "It's so exciting. The tension is so strong. Oh my God. This Yun Shirshir was really extraordinary. He hadn't misjudged her." On the screen, Yin Dongyu suddenly turned around and grabbed Yin Xiaochuan's shoulders tightly. His eyes were bloodshot and he said crazily, "You're my sister and I'm your brother. Do you understand? Why can't we? We shouldn't be together. Do you understand? Why can't we be together?" The young and ignorant Yin Xiaochuan didn't understand. She persisted, "I can't live without my brother. We have the same blood flowing in our bodies. We're siblings. If we're together, it's incest. It's incest. Do you understand?" Yin Dongyu stared straight at her, trying to wake her up. She suddenly laughed miserably. She grabbed his wrist and placed their wrists together. "Is this the reason?" Yin Xiaochuan stared at him with tears in her eyes. "If this is the reason, then I'll cut it open with a knife and let the blood in my body drain out. Then will it be enough?" "Shut up. Are you an idiot? Or are you threatening me?" Yin Dongyu covered her lips tightly, his heart thumping in fear at her angry words. Yin Xiaochuan suddenly broke down and threw herself into his arms. She cried weakly and helplessly, "But I don't want you to be with another girl. My heart will ache. My heart will ache. Brother, I like you. This is something that can't be helped. It would be great if it could be controlled. But there's no way to control it. In Dongyu seemed to have lost all his strength. His arms hung limply by his side as he kept muttering, "We shouldn't be together. This can't happen." "Brother!" In Xiaochuan couldn't stop her tears from flowing down her cheeks and into the corner of her lips. She opened her mouth several times, wanting to say something, but stopped herself. In Dongyu's heart ached as he hugged her. His brows were filled with heartache and conflict. There was also a hidden pain in his eyes, but he could not help it. This scene should have ended with this hug. However, Lin Fengtian did not shout, "Okay," or "cut," for a long time. The entire set fell into a dead silence. Without the director's orders, Yun Shishir didn't know how to proceed. Why hadn't Lin Fengtian given any orders when the scene had ended? Gu Xingze raised his head, but he was stunned. Yun Shishir also noticed his absent-mindedness and could not help but feel suspicious. She quietly turned her head and looked at Lin Fengtian, who was sitting in front of the monitor. She saw Lin Fengtian standing up straight, looking somewhat flustered and at a loss. He looked at the door with an ugly expression and his body stiffened. Yun Shishir was confused for a moment. She couldn't help but follow his line of sight and turned slightly to look at the door of the music room. The door was wide open. The night outside the window was dead and dark. Chapter 584. The man was dressed in a black shirt, as if he wanted to blend into the deep night. His entire body was emitting a terrifying and sharp aura. His entire body was covered in a thick dark haze, almost causing everyone present to be unable to breathe. Muyaja, Yun Shishir was stunned. Immediately after, the dark panic almost made her sink into a swamp, almost suffocating her. The man stood at the door with both hands in his trouser pockets, looking sharp. His short black hair was messed up by the night wind, and it covered his eyes. However, it could not hide the murderous intent in his eyes, which seemed to have fallen into an ice cellar. His handsome face was cold and severe, and there was almost no expression on it. But his deep and handsome eyes were sharp, and the murderous look in them was like a cold knife in the cold night, ruthlessly stabbing her body, as if there was a sharp edge on her back. At that moment, Yun Shishir couldn't help but tremble, and she couldn't help but take a few steps back. The man raised his head slightly, raising his arrogant chin, and his thin lips curled into a cold and threatening arc. "Why aren't you continuing?" Yun Shishir's breathing stopped, but she didn't know how long he had been standing there and how much he had seen. But she comforted herself. She was an actress, and this was just acting. Why did she have to feel guilty? Acting shouldn't be taken seriously, right? Moreover, he was the one who betrayed her first, wasn't he? Didn't he also have an ambiguous relationship with Mu Wanru? His good fiancée even ran in front of him to show off her prowess. But at this moment, what was he? Was he angry? She wasn't angry yet. Shouldn't he be the one who should reflect on himself? Why was he looking at her like that, as if she had done something wrong? But even if she thought so, under the man's cold gaze, these seemingly righteous reasons were no longer valid. It was as if, in the end, she was the one who had committed the most heinous crime. Her whole body stiffened, as if there was endless cold air rising from the soles of her feet. It was very exciting. "Why are you not acting anymore?" His voice was as cold as ice. It almost froze the atmosphere in the room to below zero. Everyone on the set couldn't help but shiver as their shoulders trembled in fear. Lin Fengtian, in particular, looked even worse. How did he appear here? According to the information he had gathered, he had an important acquisition and was flying directly to London, England, and would only be back in a few days. Muyaja stepped into the silent night and slowly walked in. He stepped forward and she stepped back. He closed in step by step and she retreated step by step. Muyaja's face was as cold as ice. It was frighteningly unfamiliar. Seeing that she was trying to hide behind Gu Xingze, he was so angry that he laughed. His black eyes flashed with blood-red laughter. "Come here." Although his voice sounded casual, every word he said was filled with a chilling intent. He ordered her to go over, but Yun Shishir's feet seemed to be frozen by the cold air, as if they had taken root. She did not move for a long time. Her neglect made the displeasure and anger in his heart boil to the extreme. "Come here, this is the second time." Mu Yaja glared at her fiercely. If looks could kill, she wouldn't be regretful even if she died 10,000 times. Good. This woman, she was really good. He had only been in England for a few days, but she had blocked his number. He thought that something had happened and hurriedly booked a ticket to return home. But what about her? Chapter 585. Lin Fengtian was frightened and was thinking about how to put out the fire. First, he had to put out Mu Yaja's anger. Seeing that Mu Yaja had lost control of his anger and was approaching Yun Shishir, Lin Fengtian was frightened. Yun Shishir was so shocked that she retreated, her hands and feet cold. Gu Xingze saw Mu Yaja's murderous aura and immediately pulled Yun Shishir behind him to protect her. He watched Mu Yaja's every move cautiously. Lin Fengtian had a bad feeling. He rubbed his hands nervously and quickly stood in front of him before the situation got out of control. "Chairman Mu." Mu Yaja's footsteps paused for a moment as he lowered his head to give him a sidelong glance. "Chairman Mu, don't take it seriously. This kissing scene is all fake." Before Lin Fengtian could finish his words, Mu Yaja suddenly reached out and grabbed his collar, pulling him in front of him. "Do you think I'm a child? Fake? Who are you kidding?" His eyes were dark and his pupils constricted. "Didn't I tell you that all kissing scenes are forbidden? Did you take my words for granted?" Lin Fengtian swung his arm violently, and under the huge inertia, Lin Fengtian fell heavily to the ground, making a loud thud. The assistant director and a few of the crew members were shocked. They ran to Lin Fengtian's side and helped him up. Yun Shishir was shocked. "Director Lin?" She wanted to rush over to see if he had fallen badly, but Gu Xingze pulled her arm behind him. Yun Shishir was angry and glared at Mu Yaja. The latter sneered. "You still have the mood to care about others? Very good. Good, it was really a good scene." He had warned Lin Fengtian not to let Yun Shishir have any physical contact with any male actor. However, as his subordinate, Lin Fengtian actually disobeyed his orders. And what about his woman? What did he do when he was not in the country? Being intimate and loving with other male actors. Today he had bumped into him. What about the other times? What did she do behind his back? Mu Yaja's icy gaze slowly landed on Gu Xingze's hand that was tightly gripping Yun Shishir's arm. The corners of his mouth curled into a sinister arc. Yun Shishir glanced at Lin Fengtian, whose face was filled with pain. Fear, panic, and self-blame attacked her at the same time. It almost gave people the illusion of suffocation. It was unavoidable. She had a clear conscience. Kissing scenes were just a normal part of filming. Everything she did was according to the script. Other than that, she maintained a perfect distance from Gu Xingze. She should have had a clear conscience. Yun Shishir gritted her teeth and said angrily, "Mu Yaja, what are you doing? What's the point of venting your anger on others?" Mu Yaja's pupils constricted, revealing a cold glint. "You also know that I'm very angry now?" Yun Shishir glared at him, her breathing rapid. He said again, "Come over here. I'll give you 3 seconds. So be it. She didn't do anything wrong, did she?" She sucked in a deep breath of cold air and took a small step forward. However, she was stopped by Gu Xingze. "Shishir, don't go over there." Gu Xingze, on the other hand, was not afraid of Mu Yaja. He lifted his chin and met his cold gaze. "Mu Yaja, so this is how you force Shishir? Shishir?" Mu Yaja's lips curled up coldly. "How affectionate." "Gu Xingze, you're really persistent," Mu Yaja retorted. The two of them stood facing each other. Ice and fire. Chapter 586. The invisible collision of auras spread to every corner of the set. It was as if countless sharp blades were colliding in midair. Mu Yaja's cold gaze fell on the hand that was holding Yun Shishir tightly. He said in a cold voice, "Take your hand away from her." Gu Xingze met his gaze expressionlessly. He was not afraid of his threat at all. Instead, he held Yun Shishir's hand even more tightly and intertwined his fingers with hers. Yun Shishir looked at Mu Yaja's increasingly cold face. She struggled slightly and wanted to break free from his grip. Gu Xingze held her tightly and turned his head. He said softly, "I'm here. Don't be afraid." His consolation did not calm her down at all. Undoubtedly, his protection would only anger Muyaja even more. She did not want to anger this man, let alone hurt the innocent. Lin Fengtian stood up with his hands on his shoulders and looked at the smoke-filled battle. He glanced at the angry Muyaja and saw that his muscles were tense. He suddenly understood. Could it be that Yun Shishir was his woman? So, he banned Yun Shishir from filming any kissing scenes in the set, and even from having intimate contact with anyone of the opposite sex? Was it because of his possessiveness towards this woman? Then, what was going on with Gu Xingze? Why was he at odds with Muyaja? What was he thinking? Lin Fengtian suddenly felt a headache coming on. The situation that had gone out of control was definitely not what he had expected. Let go of her. Muyaja gave an ultimatum. Obviously, his anger had reached its limit. This Gu Xingze, who did he think he was? How dare he fight with him? Yun Shishir's body trembled from the immense fear she felt. Gu Xingze sensed her trembling fingertips and felt the cold temperature of her hand. He held it tightly and did not let go. Instead, he protected her behind him even more. Very good. Muyaja's lips curled into a bloodthirsty smile as he strode towards them. Lin Fengtian saw that things were about to get out of hand. He was afraid that things would get out of hand. He immediately gritted his teeth and tried to stop Muyaja. Muyaja did not even bother to look at him. In his fury, he kicked him to the side without even looking at him. Lin Fengtian hit the prop box and felt dizzy. Yun Shishir's face instantly turned pale. Just as she was about to stop him, she saw Muyaja walked towards Gu Xingze. "Muyaja, don't!" Yun Shishir screamed, but Gu Xingze quickly pushed her aside. She lost her balance and hit the wall. When she came back to her senses, she saw that Muyaja had already grabbed Gu Xingze's collar with a murderous look and was swinging a fist towards his face. As Gu Xingze was distracted, he was caught off guard and received a solid punch. His entire face was turned to the side, and a bloody gash appeared at the corner of his lips, from which a trickle of blood seeped out. Yun Shishir was scared out of her wits. She wanted to go forward and stop him, but she was pulled aside by the field reporter behind her. "Shishir, don't go over. It's too dangerous." The two men fought because they were angry and did not know how to control their strength. If he accidentally hurt her, her bones would probably be shattered with a single punch. Gu Xingze slowly straightened his body. He touched his lips with his long fingers and the tip of his tongue tasted blood. There was no doubt that Muyaja's punch was not to be trifled with.